Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I'm Connor O'Gara. Will, happy Halloween. How is the 15-foot skeleton that is probably parked on your lawn right now?
He's still there. I just checked on him. The neighborhood kids have named him Jeff. They love Jeff. They've had an ongoing, right? They apparently named him years ago. And I'm like, you know what, buddy? That can be his name. He doesn't have a name. So we haven't gotten him any real, costumes yet, but we're going to turn him into a turkey for Thanksgiving, and then a big scary Santa, and then we'll take him down for New Year.
Important question, and I know everybody's thinking it, so I'll just ask it. Jeff with a J or Jeff with a G?
Got to be a J. I feel like they're not Fresh Prince of Bel-Air fans at that age yet.
No disrespect to any listeners of Jeff with a G, but you get why I asked that question. Even you get that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Jeff Collins, no hate.
Yeah. Look, I already gave him crap. I gave him crap out the first time he came on this show. Trust me, he knows. Mm-hmm. Jeff with a G is a unique breed. Great pod. Great pod coming up. We've got both Aaron Murray, Chris Doering together. How about that? Together coming up in a bit to preview all things Florida, Georgia. Lad of the week, of course. Going to be painful for your boy. That's a teaser. All right. It's going to be a tough one. We're going to get through it. We'll be just fine. But week 10, it is here, Will. Let's start with Florida and Georgia. Number 2, Georgia is a 20. Oh, no, not a 20-point favorite. They're a 16.5-point favorite. Feels like they're a 20-point favorite. Yeah. The over-under I have is a 24-point margin of victory for Georgia. That's where I was going with the 20. That's the average the last 3 years. It is the most lopsided 3-game stretch in this rivalry since Spurrier led Florida to an average margin of victory of 37.7 points from 1994 to 1996.
I tell you what, those Florida streaks of the 90s, buddy, if you had a rivalry with Florida, you would get smoked in the 90s. Even if you were I'm not going to speak specifically like Tennessee, but I feel like the entire decade of the 90s, Florida was whooping people. That's how it was for us.
Florida was so good in the 90s, it had to invent new rivalries like an Alabama rivalry in the SEC championship every year. Yep. It's kind of, what Georgia's become in a lot of ways, where all of a sudden you're like, oh, Georgia and Alabama, is that a rivalry?
Connor, I'm so glad you just said exactly that, because I was going to ask that question at the end of it, and I'll just ask it here. Florida, Georgia used to be, maybe Tech for a little bit. That deep-seated hatred for Tech, we get that. Auburn for a minute. Is Florida still Georgia's biggest rivalry, you think?
I think so. I think it's what they take the most satisfaction in, and that's what a rivalry is all about. Mm-hmm. What are the bragging rights that you get to reference most? Because Georgia Auburn's great. It's a great rivalry. I don't know that that's got the same year-round staying power that winning that game in Jacksonville has. Because if you're an Auburn fan, you're like, look at our schedule. We had to face Alabama this year. We had to go to Athens and go to Tuscaloosa. So it gets a little bit muddied, those waters. Whereas this one still feels pure in so many ways. So despite the fact that it is in the midst of this 3-game stretch that's been incredibly lopsided, historically lopsided, I would still say it's on par with that.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up is you made exactly that point about Florida, whereas I feel like in the last 3 or 4 years it's been Alabama. But the deal with Alabama, especially under Saban, is that if you get good enough, you just got to face the final boss. So I'm sure there's a hatred there, but it hasn't exactly really been like a back and forth rivalry with all there's been a couple of crazy finishes for sure, right? But I feel like it doesn't have all the lore yet, whereas Florida's just kind of it's like that rival that you're just like, I hope bad things happen to them. I don't think they're exactly there with Bama yet.
Who's John with each other on social media the most? Yep. Texas and Texas A&M fans, you both get this. You understand what this is like. Who are the people that you love to see hate? Who do you take the most satisfaction in seeing their downfall? That's probably it. So let's go back to those mid-90s games. Earmuff it for just a second, Georgia fans, but it's going to get better for you, I promise. As you recall, that was part of a certain half 100 between the hedges game that Spurrier coached, and that won't be the last reference to that game on this podcast with the 2 guests that we have joining us later. Of course, 2 of the games that were played in that stretch from 94 to 96 were played on college campuses. Very, very unique, obviously. Jacksonville was going through the stadium renovation to welcome the expansion Jaguars. You remember all this stuff. So to find a more lopsided 3-game stretch in this rivalry in which all 3 games were played in Jacksonville, like these last 3 have been, you have to go all the way back to the Harry Truman administration, 1945 to 1947, wherein the Dogs beat Florida by an average of 27 points during that stretch. Yeah. Significant, very significant. This is the most lopsided that it's been for a 3-year stretch in Jacksonville specifically in a very, very long time. You can do the math there. The question is whether or not that'll continue with DJ Lagway in his first start away from the swamp. Will Georgia beat Florida 4 consecutive times for the first time since the Herschel Walker administration? I mean, era. We're not getting political. We're not doing that. I'll say this. Florida's chances look wildly better than they did a month ago. Okay. And that's not just because Lagway kind of gives you a better chance to be able to stretch the field compared to Mertz. That's not just a Lagway versus Mertz thing. I'm going to save a lot of the Lagway talk for our interview later. We get into a lot of Lagway stuff with Doering and Murray, which we did an early drop on the YouTube channel, by the way. If you want to go check that out, you're like, hey, is that going to drop tomorrow? No. We actually dropped that on Tuesday morning. It was that good. Great stuff from those two guys. In the 4 games that Florida's played since the A&M loss, since A&M went into the swamp and just ran them out of the building. 3-1, Florida is. All double-digit wins, lone loss, overtime at Tennessee, number 7 team in America. Would have could have possibly been a different story if Billy had the guts to go for 2 instead of kicking the can into overtime, but you get what I'm saying. You can't undo the bad showings that we saw against Miami and against A&M. Okay, so I'm not taking those away. But in the last month, which is relevant, I don't think there are 25 teams better than Florida. Okay? Maybe that's bold. Maybe that's bold to say that. I feel like I've watched this team pretty closely. Obviously, one of those 25 teams that you would say are 25 teams maybe that is better than Florida, Georgia. Definitely one of them. Okay? They're making any one of those lists.
They're significantly better than Texas, apparently. So.
Apparently, yeah. Who knows how long the list is of teams that are better than Georgia, but it is not particularly long.
Doesn't include Texas.
Yeah, can't put Texas on it right now. That much we know for sure.
Yeah.
But this Georgia team might actually be getting healthier with Mykel Williams perhaps playing even more snaps than he did against Texas, as well as potentially Tate Ratledge, who dressed against Texas but was unable to give it a go in that one. That's huge because obviously I think Carson Beck needs the interior of that offensive line to hold up. Tate Ratledge in pass protection is where his presence is felt the most. He is considered to be as good of an interior pass protector as there is in the sport. With what Carson Beck likes to be able to do when he is right, you'd think Carson Beck staying clean, operating, working through his progressions, doing all those things instead of rolling out and doing the flushed out of the pocket type throws. He can step up in the pocket better than he can make throws rolling outside of it. I think Ratledge's presence would give him a better chance to be able to stay clean and perhaps take advantage of the fact that I don't think Florida has seen an elite passer since Cam Ward. That's debatable, okay? Carson Beck has not been an elite passer this year, okay? Not this year. Not with the sample size, even in the Texas game, that we have seen from him. His chances of looking like an elite passer increase if Jason Marshall Jr., the top Florida corner, is going to be out and is not going to be one of those lockdown guys on the outside. Again, as I always say, we're doing this before availability reports are out. So by the time people are listening to this, we're probably going to have a little bit more clarity on his status. Maybe Carson Beck doesn't need to be elite to be able to put up points against Florida. But if the last 3 games that Florida has played were any indication, I don't think it's a given that Florida is just a doormat against the run. And I don't think it's a given that you can be one-dimensional against this team. In 3 games in October, Florida was 23rd in FBS with 3.2 yards per rush allowed, which that's all right, really solid. You'll take that. But it's all the more impressive when you consider what Florida was before that, and when you consider that Florida went up against obviously 2 of the top 7 rushing attacks in America with UCF and Tennessee. Does that continue against Trevor Etienne in this reunion game with Florida? I don't necessarily know if it's a revenge game. We'll call it a reunion game, all right? The last time we saw Etienne, he had his best game in a Georgia uniform. He was great. He was as good as you could have hoped for in that game against a really good Texas defense when Georgia didn't have a whole lot else cooking besides him on offense. Georgia hasn't hit 150 rushing yards against FBS competition since that opener against Clemson. And even that was a slow start, and it was tough sledding. And they're like, yeah, man, what are we doing with this ground attack early on? And obviously Etienne wasn't out there for that one. But still, during this 3-year run against Florida, Dogs hit at least 171 yards rushing in all 3 contests. They averaged 201 on the ground during these last 3 years. Granted, those were against wildly disappointing Florida defenses who were not playing at the level that this group has been playing at the last month. Shout out to Des Watson, our 445-pound thick king of the universe. 18 snaps.
Let me ask you this question, too. Now that we're sitting here looking at Florida's defense, I mean, even like the 2020 trash team did not have a good defense. This is the best Florida's defense has played in
5 years. 5
Pretty
years.
comfortably. Since 18?
No, since 19.
Since 19.
I would say since 19. That was when Todd Grantham wasn't public enemy number one.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a different story with the Georgia matchup and the struggles that he had there. But and you know what, he wasn't entirely to blame for that. Their offense struggled in those games against Georgia, but still, yeah, they are playing the best that they've played in a while. All right, and maybe you could maybe compare it to the stretch that they had to start 22. That's probably up there as well, right at the beginning of the Napier era, maybe early on last year. But in terms of like mid-season or later, this is the best that they've looked in a while. And obviously, I think you could point to those guys up front, Cam Jackson as well, the emerging Grayson Howard, a big part of that, what he's been able to do as a young linebacker. Add it all up, and I can absolutely see a scenario in which Georgia finds itself in a dogfight, pun very much intended, against an improving Florida team. That's not going to surprise me because if we're just looking at Georgia, regardless of the opponent, that's kind of been the story, the more times than not, okay? The Texas game is the outlier. Even Georgia fans would tell you that. But I just think that with Georgia getting healthier right now, I think we're going to see a more disciplined team that we saw in the first half of the season. I don't think Georgia goes full Texas mode, but much like when I made a certain prediction that the Dogs would lose by 3 touchdowns, this time I'm going to do the inverse. I'm going to say the Dogs win by 3 touchdowns. Give me Georgia 35, Florida 14.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm trying to look up, man, college stats are so zany, aren't they?
CFBstats.com. That's the best place for stats. If you don't go there, you're missing out. I go to that and I go to Football Reference. Those are the two best that give you so many different breakdowns. Like whenever I bring up scrimmage plays of 20 yards or something like that, CFBstats.com is so good. I would advertise for free for them because of the amount of time I've spent on that site over the years.
So I found what I was looking for, which is turnovers forced, right? So in the aggregate over the course of the season, Florida is number 80 with just over about 1 turnover forced a game, right? So we've seen the blueprint, what it looks like whenever Georgia is struggling. It is Carson Beck turnovers pretty clearly, right? In his last couple of games here, he has had 3, 2, 0, 3 picks, right? So all 8 of his picks have come in the last 4 weeks. I think for Florida to be in this game, they need to create some havoc, right? The thing that's been so interesting about Florida is that, what a funny football team. Their defenses, okay, LSU is a great example. LSU turned around their defense. They don't really have a sound defense, as we saw last weekend. They have a havoc-causing, turnover-creating defense. When you have a bad defense, it's a lot easier to get to a place where you're just causing chaos and making negative plays happen than it is to be kind of sound, Florida weirdly has been a sound defense.
I agree.
Doesn't create a ton of turnovers, which is super, because you could have a flash of the pan 4, 5, 6 weeks of creating 2 turnovers a game, and suddenly you flip field position. Doesn't matter. They give it 500, 400 yards. You're not allowing the points. You're scoring points on the other end. You're winning big games. Your defense looks better than they are, right? It's weird because I would say that the one thing that Florida needs to do is something they haven't done. What's up?
I think they've faced relatively low volume passing offenses, which is probably part of it.
Yeah.
UCF not throwing the football a ton. Tennessee obviously has turned into a one-dimensional offense. Kentucky with whatever that was that they put on display last week at the Swamp, not a high-volume offense as well. So you can kind of look at some of that as well with the recent success that they've had and say, all right, is that part of it as well? Just there aren't those opportunities for, as Georgia fans know very well, tips and overthrows. Got to get those.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, it's super duper interesting, right? Because I would argue that Beck, he's like a volume guy, right? So we've talked about the amount of passing attempts that happen. Beck is another one of those guys that has a ton of passing attempts. He has now gotten to a point in his career where what we liked about him in his first couple of years, he's a veteran backup, he's holding the clipboard, okay, he's coming in, he's running, he's pulling the levers. He's not a game manager, but he's not a game loser, right? Until, SEC championship game, we can talk about that, but that really was kind of a weird play. It wasn't like, he made a bad read and threw it. It was like he fumbled and it was just weird. So it's like this year in these last 4 games, he has tried to do a little bit too much. But I do wonder if Florida can kind of, basically, I'm going to put it to you like this. I think more passing attempts are getting to a point where they're a win for the defense because those picks will happen at any time, and maybe you need to throw some mustard bottles on the field to review them sometimes, but that's, just a bad read at the end of the day. That being said, I think Georgia likely is going to try to shorten the game, right? I mean, again, you're about Florida fans. Etienne's pretty hard to tackle. So you get him out in space. You can kind of keep the clock moving. You can do all that. Basically, we don't want the game script, if you're a Georgia fan, that has happened in these kind of weird slugfests, talking about Mississippi State, stuff like that, where it's like, how are we here? They've proven they can throw the 460 yards with Beck. They can throw the ball over the yard. But against Florida, you just kind of want to get out of there. You know what I'm saying? You don't really need to do that. So I would say that this would be a little bit more of like an old school Kirby thing in the way that he's won these games has been make Florida create mistakes, make Florida bobble punts, make Florida put in the wrong guy, make Florida. I mean, that's kind of what started to swing last year too, and that was in the middle of Brock Bowers is hurt. Man, that guy's tearing up in the NFL. Anyway, Brock Bowers is hurt. What's that going to do to Georgia? Well, not much, because they're going to still be this juggernaut and not make the mistakes, right? So that's the new thing about Georgia. So yeah, I think that it's going to be a real pre game for Florida's defense. I think that playing well in this game and still losing would be enough hopium. If you're Billy and you get down to the last possession again, it's like, man, if I can just get another year, get Lagway some reps, like it's much easier of a sell when you see Lagway playing. Now, but that being said, I just want to say this and I'll get out of here. If that version of Georgia's defense shows up from Texas, buddy, don't get off the bus.
I think Lagway would be very much in over his head. If those Florida tackles don't hold up in this one, you're going to see some things from DJ Lagway that you haven't seen before. And I say that as someone that loves me some DJ Lagway, okay? I am all aboard. I will drive that hype train. But if that Georgia defense shows up, and if they're winning, they won those battles with Kelvin Banks Jr., all right? If they're winning those battles like that and they come out hair on fire, there will be some moments with Lagway where you're like, maybe he just needs to pull an Anthony Richardson to take a play off right now because you don't know what he's seeing.
That felt mean.
Just saying.
I'm just kidding, but that's actually very funny. But yeah, I think that's the other side of it, right? Is that I trust Georgia's defense. Don't make me regret it. Don't do the Mississippi State thing. But I trust Georgia's defense after the Texas game. If they play 80% of that, if they play 70% of that, if they're just not lazy and bored out there, basically, they're going to force a key turnover or three. Florida's defense has not proven that, and I think Beck is smart enough that in these big games that are not in Tuscaloosa, he takes care of the ball a little bit more. Again, not Texas, but that game was already like I said, it didn't matter. I could have been playing quarterback for Georgia dang near because they should have won that game by 50 points. I mean, literally, so if that defense shows up, it's over with, and I'm going to take Georgia to win by, I think in reality, I'll take Georgia by 2 scores.
If Florida wins this game, I think Billy Napier's back in 2025. I think this is the only game left on Florida's schedule where I would definitively say, yes, he would be back. And I'm even opening up the possibility that they could win this game and lose out, and I still think they probably find a way to run it back with Billy. Because honestly, if they win this game, the odds of them winning this game and losing out feel so unbelievably unlikely, especially knowing that Florida
play
State's
Florida
State.
Yeah,
that one. Cupcake week is rivalry week for Florida.
You know what? If you beat Georgia and you lose out, you lose to Florida State, you might be in trouble. I'm just going to say that out loud. They're so bad that you might be right there.
I don't know what those parlay odds are, but they're incredibly high. Yeah. Don't even take those. They're not worth it. But if this manifests itself, think of what it would mean. You would knock off a Georgia team with Lagway, your decorated true freshman, your Gatorade National Player of the Year running the show in your offense that you're still calling plays for. Yeah. That would send such a loud message that would be felt well beyond anything Billy Napier's done. Well beyond, you want to talk about Anthony Richardson making some unbelievable plays against Utah in the first game of the Napier era. This would be a much louder statement than that. Florida's got 6 consecutive losses to AP top 25 teams, Will. Last win against a ranked foe in the AP poll came last September in the Tennessee game. Go figure, Trevor Etienne was a star that night, ironically enough. Any guesses?
And Watson.
And Desmond Watson. Good point.
Come on now.
Good point.
He was my star.
God, unreal play on Joe Milton. We need to build a statue for that. We do. Question for you. Let's see if you can name this. When was the last time that Florida beat an AP top 25 team away from the swamp?
Man, that's a great question because the 3 I thought of were not there. I don't know, actually. Yeah.
2020 against Georgia.
Oh, wow. And that was like the weird game where they had like the Wake Forest quarterback who didn't play, and they had like 8 quarterbacks deep, and then we saw a gentleman we never saw again, and Stetson Bennett couldn't throw the ball.
Wake Forest quarterback. Who are you talking about?
No, remember they started.
You're talking about Jamie Newman?
Yeah, like they were like on their like 5th.
He had already opted out.
No. I know. But like I always think about that game as they were on their 5th or 6th quarterback because they had planned on Jamie Newman.
It had turned into the why isn't JT Daniels playing more? Why has he been sitting for the first? Yeah, that's right.
Before times. Yeah.
Also, the last game that Georgia has lost to a non-Alabama team that day. Yeah, wow. Crazy. Long time ago. Florida has lost 12 consecutive games against AP top 25 teams away from the swamp. That's not good. That's not good. And in many ways,
hold on, you're going to tell me that since the coronavirus pandemic, Georgia has only lost to Alabama?
After that game.
After that game.
Yeah.
That's insane. I'm sorry. That's a crazy stat because the games are on big stages, so we feel like
51 consecutive wins against non-Bama teams is the number. Yeah, wow. Crazy. 4 years that it has been, and in all the wrong ways, the opposite trend for Florida that they're looking to break in what would be a huge way on Saturday. It would just be such a monumental feat for Napier, given how we're talking about Georgia right now too. I mean, it felt so big for Vandy to beat number 1 Alabama, not just Alabama when they've already suffered a loss, they're number 7 or something like that. No, when Alabama was number 1 and coming off the Georgia win, when Georgia's the number 2 team in the country and they're coming off of the bye and the Texas win, it would just send such a loud message to this this narrative that, look, we have echoed since the start of the season, since the Miami game, going back to that Billy Napier's a dead man walking. Well, you get very few opportunities in life to reverse the tide, and this is absolutely one of them. I don't think they do, but again, if it does, we're having significant conversations when we talk again on Sunday.
I've been trying to reverse the tide for like 20 years. It just keeps coming back. I'm sick of these folks.
That's good.
Anyway,
again, we'll have a lot more with Aaron and CD on this game. So you're getting you're getting what?
So much
50 minutes of 50 minutes breakdown. Yeah, it is Florida Georgia week. Great slate in the SEC though. Besides this game, even though you look at it and we're like, hey, we only got 5 games to break down. All of these games have significant implications in terms of SEC championship, in terms of playoff. We've talked about how that's the beauty of this November and the way that it's setting up in the SEC. But this would be an upset. If Florida can pull it off, that would send shockwaves through college football. I hate to even say that. Gosh, bleep that out. I'm going to get Dana to bleep that out. I don't like that I said that.
I'll say this, and I need to say this now because the Georgia game is obviously about to happen. I mean, I think you got to know on Billy before November 23rd, which is when Ole Miss comes to town. Now, I know we all do everything above the board. Nobody will ever do something such as put feelers out to a certain Ole Miss coach while he's in town. But I think you got to know by that date, So that being said, I think a close loss to Georgia, playing it close with these 2 top 5 teams they got. Of the 3, LSU is obviously the most beatable. I don't need to say that for any reason. And so that being said, if you go 1-2, if you go, if you keep the first 2 close, if you don't embarrass yourself by the time Lane Kiffin comes to town, you might be safe, Billy.
Who knows?
Who knows? Surely, yeah.
Wild things can unfold over the course of the next few weeks in Gainesville. All right, number 19, Ole Miss. Touchdown favorites on the road against Arkansas. The over-under I have is 3.4 yards per carry for Ole Miss. That is stunningly low. Yeah, sounds bad because it is. That's what Ole Miss is averaging in SEC play this year, Will. Lane Kiffin, the high-powered, set it and forget it, 200 rushing yards a game, Ole Miss rushing offense. Where is it gone?
4 good running backs at Jackson Dart.
Man, it has not been there this year. In those 4 non-conference games, they hit at least 6 yards per carry in every one of them. Ole Miss's best rushing day in SEC play was hitting 4.3 yards per carry at LSU. And that was a rushing attack that was non-existent down the stretch. So that's their best rushing game in an SEC game this year. Outside of that, 3.2 yards per carry against Kentucky, 3.4 against South Carolina, and most recently they had 2.2 yards per carry against Oklahoma. If we're writing the obituary on Ole Miss's playoff hopes, if that's what we're talking about by game's end, that'll be the cause of death. That right there, okay? It's just been tough sledding. And the non-JJ Pegues tailbacks, the traditional tailbacks, I almost want to include them in that, but I won't. In that Oklahoma game, Will, they combined for 20 carries for 49 yards. That blew me away because I was thinking about this. I was like, when was the last time Lane Kiffin's backfield, and we're going to take the quarterback stuff out of it because a lot of times, sack yardage counts against that and stuff like that. So it can be a little bit wonky with that. But I went back and tried to find any other instance during the Kiffin era in which his running backs failed to combine for 50 rushing yards in a game. Only had 59 in the game last year against Bama, 59 coming from the tailbacks. That's what I'm saying. But under 50 rushing yards from the Ole Miss running backs actually happened last year in the Tulane game when Quinshon Judkins, if you remember, he kind of like was playing through an injury at that point. Probably should have just taken a couple of weeks off. I guess they did technically need him on that day, but he just didn't have it. That was the only instance I found during the now 5 years of the Lane Kiffin era in Oxford in which his running backs failed to hit 50 yards. The Tulane game and then just now against Oklahoma. That is wild to me. And it's telling for where this program is at and what their offensive identity lacks at this point, why it feels like they just don't have that same juice. So is this a get-right game against this Arkansas defense? Not a guarantee. Not a guarantee at all. Hogs are 36th in the country in rushing yards per allowed, which is okay, that's fine, but it's more impressive when you have the context of the competition that they face with Ollie Gordon II, with Jarquez Hunter, with Le'Veon Moss, with Dylan Sampson, as well as Caden Durham getting 20-plus carries in a football game, which when he does that, he's a pretty good running back. How about it? We saw this Arkansas defense handle the Tennessee offense and their tempo extremely well. Not necessarily the same offense in terms of identity, what those programs do, their weaknesses right now. Jackson Dart, he's more experienced than Nico. Okay, that much we know. But if he doesn't have that run game to lean on, who knows? And also, who knows what to expect from this offense if they don't have a healthy version of Trey Harris? If I had to guess, I'd say that guy plays. Pre-availability reports we're talking about right now. Okay, so it's a little bit of speculation on my part. I'm admitting that. Okay, I'm not planting my flag on that saying he's definitely playing or anything, but it seemed like there was a chance that he was going to play against Oklahoma. Initially, he wasn't even on the injury report, and then they added him to it. Very, very weird. It's almost like they forgot him or something like that. I don't know how that worked out, but he's now had 2 Saturdays full of rest since the LSU injury that he suffered that night in Death Valley. Crazy that he's still number 2 in America in receiving yards, by the way. How about that? Guy is just...
Goodness, man. And I feel like I'm like, where's Trey Harris every week? Like, he would be making such an impact on this game. And it's like, hey, he's still number 2 in receiving yards, even if he's not playing.
Yeah. If he's not back, I'd be terrified if I'm an Ole Miss fan. Okay? Because even if he's not at 100%, I would still prefer to have him out there because I think he just changes how teams can defend this Ole Miss team without the running back that we've come to know and expect, without having those guys in the backfield that truly scare you, without having a Quinshon Judkins, which I don't know how he would be doing behind this offensive line, which has left something to be desired, but it does kind of make you wonder, looking back on that decision, to say like, all right, Ole Miss, they're not going to match what Ohio State was paying. You look back on that, and obviously we can say hindsight's 2020, but Lane has always had confidence in his backs, and it just hasn't necessarily been there yet after a really nice start from Henry Parrish, but it's been a little bit different as of late. For Arkansas, Taylor Green looks 100%.
Yeah.
He looks, man, again, the triple move, I've watched that a lot. It was almost, it might have even been like a quadruple move. We can call it that. Like a little shimmy. I don't know what he would call that, but that is peak Taylor Green. Okay. And if we see that guy, then it's a different story. We saw that guy against a struggling Mississippi State defense, a defense that has a long way to go to look SEC ready. With that pressure that Ole Miss can dial up in the front 7, which still continues to be the unquestioned strength of this team, I think it's a really tough matchup for him. And I think he's probably going to play his way into some of these mistakes. I'm going to somewhat reluctantly pick Ole Miss to win. A very winnable game, I think this ends up being for Arkansas, but they look back on the turnovers and they rear their ugly head again. But I'm going to say that Arkansas covers at least. So I'll go Ole Miss to win this 27-21.
You know, hearing Lane Kiffin cry about LSU's night games, I assume they were playing this game at home, but he was like mad on behalf of Arkansas that they were.
No, he's talking about a game 2 weeks from now. All right, he's talking about a game a couple weeks from now.
I got you. I'm just playing with you. But yeah, you're right. I
hate that. Can we real quick? Like, you're going to come off as like the LSU fan in the room here, and I'm acknowledging what people are thinking when they see a comment like that. I hated that Lane said that. Go be Kentucky and then talk to me about getting night games at home. All right.
Right.
What are we doing here? The hell
Alabama's
are we
had some night games in Oxford.
Go be a team that's actually earned that kind of love. And I understand, like, oh, South Carolina's unranked. They're getting a night game at home against Texas A&M. All right, yeah, that's the way that the cookie crumbles sometimes. All right, and Ole Miss, you'd like to be able to get more night games. The best way to ensure that you're getting more night games is being a good football team. Do that.
Right.
I didn't like when LSU fans complained about it either. I didn't like it when they were complaining, oh, it's 3:30 Death Valley. It's too hot.
Oh, the Tennessee game, I thought that was loser. I thought that was loser energy. The Tennessee game, well, if I had been a night game, how about you beat this team and I get smoked and embarrassed in your own building? Anyway, sorry.
LSU fans, drink less alcohol. I know that's a crazy thing to process.
Right,
hydrate more. You're paying $150 to be at a game at 3:30. I don't know. Like, you're an adult. You could figure this out at this point. You're making that decision. I don't want to hear that as the reason for why you can't have night games either. So I hated both sides of that argument.
I knew I was not going to go back and listen to that quote because whatever he was talking about, it would only just make me more biased. So I was like, whatever. But anyway, so point being, this game is at Arkansas. We've seen that Arkansas is a little bit different of a, what would the word be? Biome? Environment, climate. It gets cold up there in Arkansas. It's like not exactly like Mississippi. It's not as.
I got to look up the weather now. It was cold for this game the last time Ole Miss was there too. It was very, very cold for it.
I know we're moving more westward and stuff, but Arkansas is still like, it's like Arkansas and Mizzou that are kind of like these northern teams that can get really windy and stuff. So I'll put it to you.
Yeah.
Yep. Lexington, yeah, because it's Appalachia. Anyway, so point being, I look at Tennessee and I look at Ole Miss. And we've done this for a long time. I'm not saying they run the same offense. X's and O's guys to get out of my mentions here. But I'm not saying they run the same offense. But what we've said from the time I started this podcast, they're tricking you. These are rushing offenses. They're not these high-flying passing. This is 2020, 2020. These are rushing offenses. Well, Ole Miss has lost that, okay? Now, that being said, if you're going to say, I want to run, remember boy Snoop, was it Snoop Connor?
Snoop Connor, yeah, circa 2021? Was that the last year the Snoop was? It was.
That was a gentleman who had like 20, I'm not going to go back and look at it, just an outlandish amount of red zone touchdowns. And it was like, they want you to be scared of their quarterback so they can just walk that bad boy in. So point being, were you going to say something? Sorry about the weather.
Yeah, I was going to say it's 72 for a game. It's a high of 72 in Fayetteville on Saturday.
Beautiful day for some football then. Good. Okay, well, hey, there you go. Anyway, so point being, weather forecasts kind of like change days out, so that's not, there's no new info with that. But anyway, so point being, I think that they were able to, like, okay, if Ole Miss's rushing attack has the day that Dylan Sampson has, it would be one of their better rushing attack. It would be their best rushing day in the SEC if you consider.
It would be their most impressive rushing day. I don't know numbers wise how that would stack up. What it would take for me to definitively say, because you can get in like yards per carry and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he had a 53-yarder in there, so like you always got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. But 22 carries, like he was getting fed. And point being, Nico just didn't have it that day, right? And Nico has not had it in a while. Didn't have it against Florida. I would rather have, like, if you look at the Tennessee side, great offensive line. Great defensive line. I think pretty good defense when their offense isn't stalling. Got a great running back, whatever. I would trade all of that for a competent quarterback like Jackson Dart right now. Okay. Now, that being said, do you agree with that?
I don't know that we can consider Jackson Dart fully competent.
I think comparatively with what's going on in the SEC.
I don't know, man. He was getting outplayed by Jackson Arnold with a much worse hand that Jackson Arnold was dealt than what Jackson Dart was dealt. The Battle of Jacksons was going to the visiting Jackson on Saturday for a while. Now, Jackson Dart deserves a lot of credit. He responded late. You're without your top target, Trey Harris. Again, you don't have the running game to speak of. I'll give him credit for being able to fight back. But, man, he fell out of those Heisman conversations kind of in a hurry for me.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right, but I would rather take him in 1,000 universes over Nico. Let's put it that way. Like right now, I don't even care the offense you're running. Jackson's more mobile than Nico, period. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, like that's the thing. So if you have a quarterback that is just not going to move the ball down the field and you're relying on, Dylan Sampson. So that being said, I really do respect offense's defensive coordinator. I think this is going to be a scrap. But I will say, I think I got Arkansas on this. So I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you look at, all those things for Tennessee and a quarterback was able to kind of overcome that on the Tennessee side, as in they made it a negative. I think that like all Arkansas has to do is take Jackson Dart out of it, which to your point has been pretty easy. And, Oklahoma has a great defense. We talked about it. Like, again, their offense is kind of like holding them back. Arkansas is right there, I think, in terms of what they do well. In terms of, we talked about their formation and how they were able to cover Tennessee, who they have to account for the run in ways that they don't for Ole Miss. So yeah, I think having those, the extra DB we talked about, being able to, like, Arkansas's defense, I like against like a deep game. You know what I'm saying? Which Ole Miss, like, especially with, like, Trey Harris, be dang, that's what they try to hit. When Ole Miss, when you think about Ole Miss getting going, it's always like a post route, it's a go route. The defense is fooled. They're in. I think that Arkansas knows we can stop this team from running the football without committing this extra DB or these extra linebackers to fill every single gap, because we're going to clean it up eventually, and they're not going to stay consistent. They're not going to keep running the football despite who checks in. Put in J.J. McKees every once in a while. He's not getting 30 carries. He's not getting 10 carries. So until they find that answer, and furthermore, like Arkansas, as far as their pass rush, like we've seen it get home. The offensive line's not as great for Ole Miss. So, yeah, I'm going to take Arkansas in a low-scoring game here, similar to Tennessee. That being said, Jackson Dart, I think, can crack this open. Like, I don't envision Ole Miss winning a close one here. Either Jackson Dart is going to say no thank you and win by 10+.
It's going to be South Carolina type game. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big game for Travis Williams, too. If you have it in your back pocket, I shut down Josh Heupel's offense. I shut down Lane Kiffin's offense. It's a nice thing to say. Nice thing to say in this business and about where you're at. Because, yes, there are some studs on this Arkansas defense, and Landon Jackson and Eric Gregory is a guy that he needs to be talked about more. Zabin Story, like these guys. Sorry, by the way, former Georgia. Yeah, he transferred from Georgia, I believe. They have some guys on that defense, and that's the good news. But if you're still able to be like, look at what I did against these highly respected offensive minds in the sport, that bodes pretty well for your future.
205 area code, hitting your line soon, Travis Williams.
205.
Calling Birmingham.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Birmingham, UAB?
No, Tuscaloosa.
Oh, Tuscaloosa. Okay. They have the same
offices.
area code?
I believe so. I know I got a 205 number.
Okay. 205. Yeah, I don't know if it extends that far. Does it?
Great question.
Yeah. Could be. State of Alabama. Could be the UAB head coaching job because Trent Dilfer.
There you go. Yeah, Dilfer's out.
That's where I thought you were going with that one. I know we talked about with Billy Napier, like Georgia is if you win that game, I feel like you're safe. I'll repeat what I said the other day. I think if Sam Pittman wins this game, he returns in 2025.
Oh, dude, he's already beat Tennessee. I think he already had that game. Now, if Tennessee sucks, like if Tennessee drops like 3 of their next 4, that's a different conversation. But when he beat Tennessee, and he's on television talking to Ali Rowe or whatever, like that was a moment.
It's a lot that can happen over the course of the next 6-7 weeks.
Especially with Taylor Green's your quarterback. If Taylor Green's your quarterback, you might be playing hockey out there.
You could be. You have no idea, man. They're going to get to that 6th win. They have who's their cupcake matchup that they have coming up? Is it Louisiana Tech?
Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, okay. So they're going to get to 6 wins, I would expect. Yep. But at the same time, I think the optics of handing Ole Miss its 3rd loss, a coach that started off at his job the same year you started off at yours, Lane Kiffin. He would have a winning record against Lane, I believe. I think he would improve to 3-2 if I'm not mistaken, against Ole Miss, which is an interesting kind of like lost in the shuffle stat of Lane's time at Ole Miss. But if you could do that while clinching bowl eligibility for your team, you're clinching a multi-win improvement and doing so this early in the season when all of a sudden you're kind of looking at it, you're going like, oh, like Arkansas could be like a 7-8 win team. That would be on the table.
I tell you what, I want to see this Travis Williams defense against Texas. I know we will, but
yeah.
You know who loves to throw deep picks?
I mean, you get Quinn Ewers a couple of picks early, and maybe that gets him going. Who knows?
Yeah, he's got the smelling salts or punching himself in the mouth. He's got to throw the picks. Anyway.
Yeah, but should be a good one in Fayetteville on Saturday. Favorable weather, it appears. Not particularly cold, unfortunately. All right, Vandy, Auburn. Auburn's 6.5-point favorite. Game of the week.
Why?
Game of the week.
We just start there. Why? What have we seen out of the Auburn Tigers that let you think they're a 6.5-point favorite over Vanderbilt?
We're going to go down a little rabbit hole here, Will.
Oh, gosh. He's cleaning the AirPods. This is like the little lighter flick.
As I untangle my headphones that I've had. And by the way, I like these. Some might wonder, like, oh, why do you – I have AirPods. I don't like using AirPods when I record because it sometimes gives me that 1 second delay. Or if all of a sudden I'm down to like 10% battery. I don't like that in the middle of the pod or something like that. So I just always use these. But the over-under for this one, 4.5 touchdowns for Diego Pavia. Because in his 2 games against Hugh Freeze, that's what he's averaging. wasn't just Diego Pavia leading New Mexico State to a 31-10 beatdown at Auburn last year. No. That is not the first chapter of the Diego Pavia Hugh Freeze saga that we have come to know and love and reference so often on this very show. He led New Mexico State to a 49-14 beatdown in Freeze's last game at Liberty when he totally didn't have one foot out the door already going to Auburn. In 2 games,
as you can see by how much better they played when he was at Auburn, his head was focused on Auburn.
Yes, I don't know if it was going to matter where Hugh Freeze was focused, unfortunately for him. In 2 games against Hugh Freeze's teams, Diego Pavia has outscored them 80-24. Pavia's teams have converted 17 of 28 on 3rd and 4th down in those matchups. He won't die. He will not die. Many saw the Freeze quote from Michael Casagrande. Freeze said, quote, "I'm sick of seeing that quarterback." I joke that, look, Pavia might as well show up to Jordan Hare in a Freddy Krueger mask because that dude has been haunting Hugh Freeze for the last 2 years. He could haunt him once again on Halloween weekend. And yes, this is Halloween weekend, not last weekend. I don't care if the calendar says November. It makes much more sense to have it Thursday and into the weekend. Let's just accept that Halloween could be in November and be celebrated. All right? Let's not be weird about it.
What are y'all's costumes?
Claire's a puppy.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty
Celebrate
cute.
That, whatever. That's
I'll text you the pic. We took her to Boo Bash at the zoo on Sunday, and it was hot for a puppy costume. And we took her out of it after like 10 minutes. She did like the trick or treating. She got like 50 different people saying that's so cute. And then we took her out of the costume. And then 15 minutes later, she's like putting her hands up like she wants back in the costume. Gets back in the costume. Gets some more compliments. Has the time of her life. It was a great.
What's that tape, Anthony Richardson? That's a competitor right there.
I'm not tired. I'm just getting started. That was just the warm up. We're ready to go. No, but we're not dressing up. But I debated what we were going to do, and I was like, dog walker's the lamest thing that I could come up with that would pair well for that. It's kind of tough. We're just going to let her be a puppy, and we're going to let her do her thing. Real quick, what are you going to be?
Me and Andre are going to be Moo Ding, and the zookeeper she keeps attacking. I got like a little pose.
Speaking of the zoo, yeah, how about that? That's great. All right. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. Diego Pavia doing Diego Pavia things.
Yep.
I joked that that Pavia, like with the Freddy Krueger mask, would make sense. That's what he's been. Mm-hmm. Here's the irony in all of this, okay? It's kind of weird that it played out this way with him going to Vandy. Like, we're now going to have 3 different iterations of the Pavia versus Freeze thing, if you think about it, because obviously, like, Freeze was first at Liberty, and then Pavia was at New Mexico State for the first 2 matchups. Freeze was at Auburn last year, and now he's at Vandy versus Auburn. Like, it's weird. 3 different iterations of Pavia versus Freeze. You know who could have prevented that from happening?
Plenty of people.
Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze could have prevented that from happening.
Oh, yeah.
There are 3 different transfer portal windows in which Hugh Freeze could have brought Diego Pavia to Auburn and instead said, enemy, buddy, you're my friend. Get on my side. Could have done it after the 2022 regular season, which was still fresh on Hugh Freeze's mind because he got his tail whipped by Diego Pavia, and he was going to go to the portal to get a quarterback anyways. He could have looked in the post-spring window in 2023, which he did look, but instead he ended up with Peyton Thorne instead of Diego Pavia. And then again, he could have looked in the post-2023 regular season window when he really could have said, you know what, Diego Pavia, that guy has beaten me twice. Maybe I should bring him on board instead of watching Peyton Thorne play quarterback all over again. Didn't do it.
Can you imagine a quarterback battle between Peyton Thorne and Diego Pavia, like on the practice field, where Diego is just like sunning him and he's like looking up at him, like, let me tell you something, buddy. And like Thorne, I mean, it'd make Thorne better. That's the thing nobody understands is look what LSU did with Swan, bringing in a backup who, if your guy starts to struggle, you can go to him. I would have just taken him at Auburn and been like, hey, we're Auburn, not Vandy, come here. But alas, Hugh Freeze just thought he knew better.
Pavia, knowing him, he probably would have still gone to Vandy though. If he's like in a true battle, and I guess he technically was.
I think it wouldn't have been a battle between him and Peyton Thorne. I think he would have seen that guy go sign me up.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know what that guy needs to show to Hugh Freeze, and you could say like, oh, maybe scheme fit, whatever. The irony is that Hugh Freeze went on McElroy and Cole went out with McElroy and Cole in the offseason, and he complained about the 7-figure price tag with the portal quarterbacks. And that's why he stuck with Peyton Thorne. He's like, do I want to make this sort of investment or do I want to just trust my ability to develop a quarterback? I don't know what Diego Pavia got from Vandy. It sure as heck wasn't $1 million. he has provided more ROI than perhaps all of 5 quarterbacks in college football this year. You can't tell me that guy hasn't provided huge financial incentive for Vanderbilt's football program, for Vanderbilt's university as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the other thing that Hugh Freeze has very publicly complained about, his quarterback turning the ball over, something that's been a pretty big sticking point. Maybe got into a battle with a certain former quarterback that played for him, Bo Wallace. Auburn's 129th in America in turnovers lost. Vandy is 6th. Points per core 4 game, Will. Auburn, 17. Vandy, 29. And of course, Diego Pavia has the SEC win that every Auburn fan and their mother covets. An upset of number 1 Alabama. Since the start of last season, Diego Pavia has 3 SEC wins. Hugh Freeze has 4. So Pavia and his New Mexico State to Vandy crew, who spent a year at New Mexico State, have a chance to even that total with Hugh Freeze this weekend. They have a chance.
Well, he's just 6.5 points. This is the most disrespectful line I've ever seen. We said the Texas line was disrespectful at 19, and they covered that kind of with ease. What are people seeing for this Auburn football team?
I think they're seeing a defense that hasn't quit. I think they're seeing a defense that I think you could make a case. There are several arguments to be made that they are a group that is punching above its weight to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. I think they've kind of outperformed what I thought they would be at different points this season. Now, the late game collapses are obviously going to overshadow who they've been for the majority of the time that they've been on the field, right? You can't allow Michael Hawkins Jr. to complete that pass to J.J. Hester in the Oklahoma game. You can't allow Brady Cook to come back from the hospital and lead a Mizzou program that was left for dead to a win in that building. You can't have these things happen and still be called an elite unit. I totally get it, okay? It's still been a defense that under DJ Durkin has been, for the most part, solid, and has had to work against the fact that all of these turnovers are obviously not their fault. It's not their fault that Peyton Thorne wants to throw it directly to a DB.
I was going to say that wasn't his fault. The Oklahoma game either.
Yeah. The pick six definitely was. But
no. I'm talking about the defense. Like the defense did not throwing a pass to Oklahoma that caused Auburn to.
Oh, right. Yeah. I saw Eugene Asante's quote from the next round about how he's excited about the success that Pavia and Vandy have had, but that they didn't forget about last year, and he's going to make sure that his teammates don't forget. Buddy, if your teammates have forgotten about what New Mexico State did on your home field, losing by 21 points, we need to have a conversation about amnesia. We need to have a conversation about who you are as a football player. If that doesn't just sit in the back of your mind and stew at you for an entire offseason, that same dude who's dapping up your head coach is coming back to your building. If you need to remind people of, oh yeah, it's that guy. The guy who's 5'8", who's running around all over our field and just making plays left and right, who thinks he's Johnny Manziel when he looks in the mirror. If you don't remember that guy, you got problems. Maybe they'll remember him. Maybe they won't. But if you think I'm picking against Diego Pavia in a matchup against Hugh Freeze, you're freaking crazy. Doors win this one 24-20. Pavia strikes again, clinches Vandy's first bowl berth in 6 years.
Yeah, I started to be like, if you don't remember Diego Pavia, his film is still pinned to the top of his profile, but his film is no longer pinned to the top of his profile.
His high school film or
his transfer film? It was like GPA, all academic.
What's his GPA? What does it say?
I don't remember. It's not in front of me, but yeah, he has now pinned his podcast, so now he's gone Hollywood.
Welcome to the club.
I have often said, doesn't matter who the coach is at Auburn, they're going to get one Jordan Hill game a year. Right. And I thought that was going to be the Arkansas game.
Jordan Hare. Did you say Jordan
Hill? Did it again, man. I'm sorry. Again, it's losing its mystery. There's one good Jordan Hare game a year. And sorry, it feels like I'm doing a voice when I say that. Anyway, so I thought it was going to be Arkansas. No. Thought it was going to be Oklahoma. It surely should have been. If they get the Jordan Hare game against Diego Pavia and Vandy, Hugh Freeze, you are enemy number one. I have been rooting for you guys and hoping you turn this thing around for a long time, despite all the other off the field stuff. I kept between the movie. If you guys go out and beat Vandy by 30 points because of Jordan Hare magic, I'm going to lose it. Like I'm trying to just rationalize the 7-point line because like exactly what you just said. Like Diego Pavia undefeated against State of Alabama, Hugh Freeze undefeated against is winless against Diego Pavia. Obvious, like all of this says one thing. I understand that the Auburn defense is kind of in there, but I mean, at the end of the day, like I mean, the best defensive player on either of these teams might be CJ Taylor.
Yeah, he's up there. He's up there. Jalen McLeod's been a really good player for that Auburn defense as well.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I always love I think Eugene Asante's phenomenal as well. But most versatile player, I think CJ Taylor definitely qualifies for that. All the different things he does for Vandy's defense. That's actually kind of an underrated in terms of the non-Pavia storylines. Why is Vandy suddenly relevant? It's not just simply Diego Pavia and the New Mexico State imports, though we talk about it a lot. The Clark Lee decision to go to decide I'm going to be my own DC. I'm just going to go back to my Notre Dame days and start calling plays. It's been a really positive result for that team. Like they're a full yard per play better. They're basically 2 touchdowns per game better than what they were last year. So in addition to having a guy that picks up all these third downs and just keeps these defenses on the field way longer than they'd like to be, that's definitely, and perhaps that's, benefited the Vandy defense is that they actually have a quarterback that can, play complementary football and do these things for you as well. But that's probably a lost in the shuffle storyline of this team.
Yeah, I think, we always say get your own play caller, but I think that really just applies to offense because there's not a ton of guys who are calling the plays on offense that are working.
He's got Jerry Kill to handle the head coaching stuff, which is also that's sort of, it's a very unique situation, the dynamics that Clark Lee has accepted at Vandy.
Every part of what you're telling me about Auburn just makes me so bad. Like, he did all the things they did wrong. DJ Durkin, of course their DC is DJ Durkin. It's like, yeah, okay, you don't have to be some Zoomer. You don't have to be some TikTok kid doing the Renegade Hugh Freeze. Jerry Kill is running the show.
Dude, Tim Beck is like 62. All right.
Like, just trust Jerry Kill. You don't have to be running RPOs. He's doing it. So, yeah, point being, I think calling your own defense might be fine. Saw Saban kind of did that a little bit last year, allegedly. So, yeah, point being, I'm picking Vandy here. It should be, honestly, not that close. If Auburn plays out of their mind here, I'm going to be furious as you freeze.
If Auburn plays out of its mind, it's the
Save
best
it for
win.
A&M, please.
It'd be the best win of Auburn's season. Is it? No. I think it's the best win of the Hugh Freeze era.
Goodness, man. They have a lot of almost wins.
At Cal last year, nope. At Arkansas won 4 games last year.
Yeah.
There's probably one I'm forgetting. Because obviously Gravedigger happened, didn't get to beat Bama. Georgia, close, doesn't count as a win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The 2 have been losses that I can think of.
I think this would be the best win of the Freeze era. Finally defeating the big boss at the end, that is Diego Pavia. What an XL moment this would be for Hugh Freeze.
Yep.
All right. Number 10, Texas A&M. Aggies, 2.5-point favorites on the road at South Carolina. How about that spread? The over-under I have for this one is 9 South Carolina TFLs. That's their average in SEC play. That's good. That's really good. A&M has only allowed 4 TFLs per game in SEC play, which is number 2 in the SEC behind, obviously, LSU. Something tells me that this will be a different kind of matchup for that group on the road. The Maroon Goons, as they are so lovingly called. It is a great nickname for an offensive line. Maroon Goons, come on. How can you not love that? Gamecocks coming off of a bye, though, as well. Maybe a chance to get even healthier at certain spots for them. But I think it's also going to be different for South Carolina if Marcel Reed's at quarterback, which I would expect that to be the case after,
as an expert opinion, it is different when Marcel Reed comes in.
Oh, you agree with that? You think
I have some experience there, I can tell you.
Yeah. If that's the case, Gamecocks are not going to get as many opportunities to be able to pin their ears back with what he does well as a mobile quarterback, a guy that you can have the design runs for. He can scramble. He can do a lot of different things. You're still going to be a run-heavy offense, even if he's not getting those design runs. South Carolina has the number 7 run defense in America in terms of rushing yards per game allowed. Some of that's skewed a little bit by the high sack numbers. I really wish that's the thing I'm going to I need to get in touch with the people at CFB Stats to see if they can come up with the sack adjusted rushing yards.
Can we book a time at media days? I saw some random people. Can we just book a time and be like, all right, guys, passer rating, sack adjusted. Okay, let's get these stats right because this is ridiculous. I can't figure out if a team had a good rushing day or not if they're Colorado.
Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult. You have to go through an actual look at the individual game log, and it's sack adjusted
math. I'm not doing math.
Normalized sack adjusted rushing yards. That's the nerdiest thing I've said on this podcast, but it's very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you look at the Marcel Reed version of this Texas A&M Colin Klein offense, it has to be able to stay on schedule. Okay, that's obvious. I need to reference this because how quickly it was forgotten in the midst of that blitzkrieg that was Saturday night against LSU. When Elko switched back to Connor Wigman, at the time, A&M had the worst passing offense in the SEC. And the thinking was Elko wanted Wigman, the more polished passer, to come in and elevate that passing game and thus elevate the ceiling of that offense. In the 2 games that Reed started with teams that actually prepped to face him, and I'm excluding Florida from that because I sure as heck thought Connor Wigman was starting that football game up until the game time decision to start Marcel Reed. In those 2 games, he had 26 points and 6 yards per pass against Bowling Green, and then 21 points and 7.4 yards per pass against Arkansas. If we want to include the Florida game and pretend that they were actually prepping for him and not Connor Wigman, Marcel Reed had 178 passing yards, 73 of which came on a play that Cyrus Allen, if you go back and watch it, he had a full 10 yards of separation on the Florida secondary. It was like, oh my God, throw this into the ocean, you won't miss him. Not trying to take away from a developing player, a redshirt freshman, not as PFF called him, a true freshman. Marcel Reed was indeed on that team last year. Mm-hmm. But just temper expectations. Temper some expectations. I'm going to be incredibly impressed if Marcel Reed can navigate that South Carolina front and that atmosphere. That is no small feat if you can do that. And perhaps that's why that spread is where it's at just 2.5 points as we sit here and talk on Wednesday afternoon. On the flip side, Will. Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. If you get the other team preview, go ahead.
Yeah, I would also be really impressed if Lenora Sellers did the same thing against that Texas A&M defensive line. These are 2 of the best defensive lines in all of college football, with dudes that legitimately scare you up front, that can change everything you want and plan to do on offense. Mm-hmm. If he operates on schedule, different story. But I don't know that you can assume that he's going to get those short fields like he got against Oklahoma when there was 24-0 when they had 72 total yards of offense. Life is pretty easy on a quarterback when that's the head start that you get. He had a great drive early to start that game, but still very favorable situation that he walked into thanks to his defense. A&M is going to make that task a lot tougher. Okay, not just those guys up front, but York, I think, has been tremendous. Torian York has been just the ideal captain in the Mike Elko defense. This is a great matchup for South Carolina's defensive line. It really is. It is an opportunity to perhaps catch A&M a little bit off guard. I think until you see the Kyle Kennards of the world, the Dylan Stewarts of the world, you see their get off, it can kind of take you back a little bit. Even those Alabama players seemed like they were really taken aback a bit by those guys up front. Mm-hmm. But it just kind of speaks to the parity of the SEC that the spread is so minimal when we're talking about the last remaining unbeaten team in conference play against the South Carolina team that was picked to finish 13th in the SEC. Yet here we are talking about a game that could go either way, I think. I'm going to predict some chaos, Will. It's been one of those years. Man. I'm going to say South Carolina gets like a vintage Rocket Sanders game. Gamecocks win 24-21. Sandstorm, blasting. Everybody's got it ringing in their eardrums when head hits pillow on Saturday night. I'm going to say that the SEC race opens up even more.
Yeah, I feel like I feel my knuckles becoming white as I am squeezing my hand here because I'm thinking how much I actually like this matchup for South Carolina and how upset I am that LSU got just cooked by Reed. And I think you spoke on the exact paradox that A&M is in, which is that the games that Reed has started, where they've had time to prepare for him, it's been different, And that being said, if I were to give an SEC team time to prepare for that person, South Carolina's got as good personnel as anybody in the SEC when it comes to it. And A&M had this tackle, has the tackle Zune that I didn't know his name in the beginning of the year. I just kept saying the A&M tackle. He's really good. He's right up there with Will Campbell. But the interior has always been something, like I said, for LSU that they've just struggled. So they couldn't run the football against A&M. I think that the interior of South Carolina's D-line is just better than LSU's. I think LSU has a couple of really key guys. Talking about Weeks, talking about Swinson, get Penn in there sometimes, But in terms of the middle of this LSU defense is still pretty soft, just to be honest with you. And they got punched in the mouth over and over and over again. I meant to say this in the recap pod. Bad week to teach my girl the phrase "you got mossed" because buddy did we. Anyway,
yikes! That's a different type of "you got mossed." Having that dude run all over you, man. He's been great.
Girl going, I regret to inform you, you got mossed. And I'm like, yeah, I sure did, buddy. Anyway, so point being, yeah, I mean, that was what really opened it up for A&M was the fact that Moss couldn't be stopped, right? And at the same time, yeah, I mean, Reed did everything he could sideline, or was amazing sideline to sideline. But what LSU had to start kind of truncating the defense to just stop them from running up the middle. Reed was just taking off, and I think that somehow South Carolina has gotten a much deeper defensive line. They've hit the portal we talked about, and I really do like their matchup here against Reed, knowing because like this isn't an if then, right? LSU lost that game for lots of reasons, but LSU's defensive game plan obviously would have been completely different if they knew Reed was playing. We don't think Blake Baker is an idiot, right? Like he was just prepared for Wickman, and so now we're in a situation here where South Carolina, like you talked about, night game 7:30. In South Carolina, that environment, I have so much respect for it after LSU, was in a dogfight at like noon over there, right? They didn't complain about night games. And so point being, like, I think that having the young redshirt freshman quarterback on the road in that environment, you got Sandstorm going, with LSU, it was, hey, we got to make this guy throw the ball. And like I said, he had 2 attempts. One of them was that crazy one-handed grab by the back. The other was, yes, the other was dime. I'm talking about that's the second one. The first one was a one-handed grab by the back, and he took it up the sideline. The second one was the one that was like the post up the middle. Nobody was under it. Looked like me playing NCAA. Had that guy get out of position. Anyway, so point being, I think that South Carolina has the ability to pressure with their, just standard without sending a ton of extra guys, and they're going to want Reed to throw the ball. And he didn't have to against LSU. I think that South Carolina has a better D-line. I think they're a little bit more sound. Certainly they're better at special teams. Goodness. I mean, that's the thing. Like we talked about, South Carolina, yeah, they had the rough field goal against LSU, but as a unit, they're always one of the best in America. So if you look at these little edges, I do think South Carolina has a lot to like, especially with A&M, getting a completely different season than they expected. We always talk about we expect to win every game, but when you lose Notre Dame, you're a young team, you just met your head coach, all this different stuff, and now you're the hunted. We've talked about that with Kirby and how hard it is to be the hunted every week. I think the A&M does struggle here, but ultimately doesn't affect their season too much because they're already so far in the driver's seat.
If South Carolina ever had a snap on a field goal like what LSU had with the holder, just not ready for it, and I don't know who ended up getting the majority of the blame pie on that one. The holder obviously looked really bad. It looks bad when the ball hits you in the chest and you look at the football as if you don't know that it's live. He obviously took the brunt of that. If that ever happened to South Carolina, Shane Beamer would march on that field himself and snap the next ball.
Snap the football. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We asked what Shane Beamer does when things go wrong. He could snap a football. LSU could use Shane Beamer today.
I'm just saying, I will write a blank check to Shane Beamer to teach Claire long snapping when that time comes, if and when that time comes. I think that the dynamic that South Carolina has discovered with this group is so unique. And if I'm coming off a big emotional win, that's not a fun thing to see. It's just not going to be. Now, I'll say this. A&M fans are going to accuse me of being really critical of Marcel Reed. What Marcel Reed did on Saturday night, one of the best relief performances I have ever seen in covering the SEC. All right, like hands down, it was incredible.
That was one of the best mobile quarterback. I mean, that was Kaepernick against the Packers. It was you probably remember that game where he had like 300 rushing yards in the playoffs against, I think it was the 50-1 team, and it was like, I can't catch this guy. This guy's a giraffe. What's going on?
If we see that version of Marcel Reed step on that field and he navigates this, and A&M is still undefeated and he does things really, really well in this game, I promise I will give your guy that love. And I will give even more love to Mike Elko for navigating this, because for being honest, this is probably a game Jimbo Fisher loses. It just
most of these games that they've won, the Arkansas game, yeah. Well, he was all right against Arkansas.
Yeah. And by the way, it's in the eye of the beholder who Mike Elko was going after when he's talking about we're a real program. I don't think he was going after Shane Beamer. That wouldn't make a lot of sense, even though he's the upcoming guy on the schedule. Let's just what we can definitively say, Mike Elko coaches with a chip on his shoulder, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's great to watch.
Did you ever see the Jungle Book?
The movie? Because I've read the book.
The animated one. He reminds me of Baloo from the Jungle Book on the sidelines. He's like he's like a sassy Baloo.
He's a great cusser on the sideline. Great.
Yes.
Oh,
and I owe him
tremendous.
an apology. I thought he was the standard defensive guy who was very like straight laced. No, he's got the fits going. He's got creative cursing. He's got a little bit of trash talk to his game. This would be a fun rivalry. I hope somebody doesn't wear. I know Garnett's not maroon, but I hope somebody wears black.
Different colors.
I just hope somebody wears black. Please.
No, I think is South Carolina. I don't know. I don't know the uniform combination.
Y'all could wear camo again. I would support that.
Yeah. Let's just say if. You know what? Actually, I don't think game script depends. I don't think that really determines whether or not Mike Elko is dropping very, very visible F-bombs on the sideline. Let's just say you're not going to see Mike Elko mic'd up for any of these games anytime soon. But that's fine. It's enough. Just the camera shots of him. Mm-hmm. I don't need the audio for that. It's almost better with the imagination. All right. Let's end with this. Kentucky, number 7, Tennessee. Tennessee's a 16.5 point favorite. The over-under I have, if it was only 6.5, I'd be like, buddy, bet the farm. The over-under I have is 0.5 first half Tennessee points. Been a minute, Will. Mm-hmm. Been a minute. Last time Tennessee scored a first half point was the Oklahoma game. Yep. That doesn't seem real. That can't be. It is. They didn't score a first half point in October. That's a long month. Got 31 days.
Again, this was our joke about Heupel forever, that he was the script god in the first 15 plays. He better score 21 points because now he's like anti-script god.
Yep. The Tennessee offense sunk to a low that had me referencing the John F. Kennedy administration. Yep, that's what we're talking about. They're trying to score their first half point since September. Yeah. The good news for Tennessee in that offense, Florida put up 48 against this Kentucky defense and did so with freshmen at running back and quarterback. And then Auburn last week ran all over UK in the second half of that one. Jarquez Hunter, he's still running. Last I checked. That would, to me, suggest Dylan Sampson should be able to do the same. The other good news for Tennessee is that Josh Heupel's offense put up an average of 41 points in his 3 matchups against Kentucky. 3-0 against him, including the 44-6 bloodbath 2 years ago in Knoxville. That game was a rout. Oof. Mm-hmm. I mentioned a few weeks ago, what would be the most surprising SEC single game result the rest of the season? Kentucky winning this game probably wouldn't be number 1 on that list, but it would be in the discussion. It really would. But they probably get taken out because they've already beat a top 10 team on the road. They already had the win against Ole Miss. If they didn't have that, this would probably be your leader in the clubhouse for that. But I think it's at least worth entering the discussion considering how dominant Heupel's been against Kentucky, as well as how bad Kentucky's been on offense, man. Like you're seeing a group that is just void of answers at this point. Bush Hamden, this experiment hasn't really worked out. I don't think he feels particularly confident about either quarterback. I don't really care if it's Brock Vandegrift or Gavin Wimsatt out there. I wouldn't trust either of them to be able to operate against this Tennessee defense, which most recently made Jalen Milroe completely ineffective in the second half of that game, at least for significant chunks of it outside of that one go-ahead drive. But I think this one's ugly. I think it's just an ugly game that maybe Tennessee's offense doesn't feel great about, but it never really feels like it's in doubt for the Vols. And I'm going to say Tennessee wins this one 31-6.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this game, right? You call it a bunch of stuff, but it's never been called pretty over these last couple of matchups, right? With Stoops and Heupel. It's been one team. Like, last year was a good game, don't get me wrong, but it was that smash mouth game with all the rushing yards.
21 was a good game, too. 21 was kind of a fun back-and-forth shootout with these two teams.
Yeah, and point being there, like, in terms of, like, you're not seeing the beautiful game of football a lot. It'll be smash mouth or it'll be kind of stuck in the tracks. And I think that Kentucky, to your point, is at a point where they are pretty stuck in the tracks. Yeah, I think Stoops is kind of – you never know what you're going to get. I will say that Stoops has been really comfy in these low-scoring games, just historically. If you need a Stoops win, it's going to be in a low-scoring game. But that being said, yeah, I think there's just too many deficiencies on that side. You know, the things that we've been worried about with Kentucky, I mean, for years at this point, where it comes to receivers and quarterback not being on the same page, the big blue turnstile against Tennessee's, great D-line and linebackers. I will say to your point, I think Tennessee needs to get going early. This is a great opportunity. A Kentucky team that, was gasping for air against Auburn last week, has been shut down and most of the SEC games, unable to move the ball. I think for Tennessee, generate a turnover, get after them early. This might be one of the only times I break my rule and say, hey, receive the opening kickoff, because if you're Tennessee, you just go down there and score real quick. Or, I mean, hey, just kick it off and let them try to play offense. Either way. But I think if you're Heupel, it's like, hey, this is a get-right game. To your point, it's favored Heupel most of the time. And I think that against this style, with like Dylan Sampson, funny enough, is just so built for this game in a way that I don't think the Kentucky the Kentucky running backs are. We don't have
not healthy either, which is part of it too, which definitely hurt that offense against Auburn. I don't really know if that would have made I don't think that makes the difference in that game, but without them in the second half, they just had no identity whatsoever.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. Like we're not getting a vintage. Maybe we do, but there's no Martinez coming through that door.
Rodriguez,
right?
Chris Rodriguez. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Rodriguez. Yes, you're right. But yeah, there's no any of these like great Kentucky backs like coming through the door. So point being, like I think that even in like a smash mouth game, Tennessee just needs to not overthink this and stay on the dang field, which Heupel's been doing better at. But yeah, it's like he became like a bizarro version of himself, right? It's like the drive used to be really quick. They would score fast or they wouldn't at all. Now it's like they're just out there taking their sweet time. The clock's running. Dylan Sampson's sweating profusely. They can't hit the deep ball, but they're running for 6 yards a carry. But yeah, I'm taking Tennessee here.
I'll say this just because if this is indeed a Tennessee blowout win, if this is indeed a really bad bowl-less season for Kentucky, Kentucky's not paying Mark Stoops $44 million to go away. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They're not paying their winningest coach of all time $44 million. That's his buyout to go away. Now, could there be some sort of settlement, some sort of $15 million up front, go fund your bourbon company, go live a great life. You don't have the heart for this anymore. Let's just, we don't want to tarnish your legacy anymore. Could they come to some sort of resolution like that? Absolutely. I've predicted that this will be the last season that Mark Stoops is in Lexington. I did not predict that because I thought they were going to pay $44 million to fire him. I was saying more so, I think Mark Stoops realizes that he's done what he can do in 12 years in Lexington. And maybe he finds his next passion in life, selling bourbon, being a defensive analyst somewhere. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But keep that in mind because the rest of the schedule is incredibly difficult. And it will be a popular topic of conversation in games in which there's probably not a whole lot else to talk about.
Yep,
so,
I agree. His version of the Jimbo Fisher ranch houses is distilleries. If I were you, Stoops, I'd go ahead and buy a distillery or two and be like, I got overhead costs. I'm not walking away from this, and get your whole buyout. That's my negotiating tip.
It's good seed money. Seed money. You can get that up front and just send that thing to the moon, man. That's the way to do it. All right, fade of the week. It is no longer lock of the week. It is fade of the week. The fade of the week hit. So, look, we're 1-0 in fades of the week. Thank you, Illinois, for not covering at Oregon. Hope you faded me as I suggested. Here's another one to be able to fade here for the people. Arizona, 6-point dog at UCF. Vegas
This is a Big 12 game, isn't it?
Yep. How about it?
This is actually kind of the weirdest Big 12 game.
Yeah. This is one of those we're going to have to be like, you're looking at the Big 12 standings. You're like, why are they showing this in the middle of this football? Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. These two teams, both a part of that now. Vegas just loves UCF, and it's weird. It's so weird. They were oddly favored in that BYU game. Or was it like maybe they were a 2-point dog in the BYU game or something, but the spread was baffling. They even talked about it on game day, and everybody just straight picked BYU.
I wonder how many UCF bettors think KJ Jefferson's still starting for them.
Yeah, because he ain't.
He's
not. I
not.
don't like to talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't like to talk about that. He's my sweet prince. But they were favored against Florida. They're favored against Colorado. And I get it. I predicted UCF to beat Florida. Did I?
I think we both did. I know I did.
Did I go back on that one? I might have gone back on that one. Now I'm blanking. Nonetheless, have not looked the part really since coming back against TCU. So I'm going to go back to the Noah Fafita well. I know it's been pretty frustrating for Arizona with the new coaching staff. He's forced a lot of these throws. His picks are way up. T-Mac is still insane. Like they're still a really fun duo to watch, but it's kind of all they got at this point. I'm going to say that's all they need against the UCF team that just fired somehow still employed Ted Roof. Well, I guess no longer still employed, but forgot he was still employed, Ted Roof. Not sure that that's going to do the trick, but we need to talk probably a little bit more about how poorly of a job Gus Malzahn's done at UCF. And I get it. I'm like a semi-local. I hate it when they say on College Game Day, beautiful downtown Orlando. Do you realize that Oviedo is like 40 minutes away from downtown Orlando? Whenever they say that, I just never agree with that. But we don't need to talk about that. Gus got the backfield that he wanted at UCF. Went out and he got KJ from the portal, which he's out here comparing him physically to Cam Newton.
I tried to tell y'all. Never believe him. He said it about Jeremy Johnson.
Well, they've lost 5 in a row. Gus is 27-21 overall. He's 4-10 against Big 12 competition since they joined that conference. 6-15 total against power conference foes. They announced an extension for him a little over a year ago. They'd apparently agreed on it over the summer. Then they announced it in October, trying to get some recruiting momentum. I guess whatever. He's got 3 years left after this season. This man got a raise simply because UCF looked around and went, buddy, our coach doesn't make a salary that's comparable with the rest of the Big 12, even though he's rich off of what Auburn paid him to go away. And therefore, we need to bump up his base pay, even though we really haven't seen it just yet. I'm kind of baffled. Like, that probably trumps the reworked 2017 contract that he got just because Auburn was scared that he was about to leave for Arkansas. I think we need to have a conversation about Gus being the #1 Jimmy Sexton masterclass. I think it's Will Muschamp's up there too, but I think Gus fleecing 2 different programs like this at the end of deals, potentially at the end of deals, if UCF actually wants to acknowledge that Gus has not been so far as he and the marketing team put the future of college football. I'd argue Gus looks like the past. That's just me. Getting a little feisty today.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's kind of what I was alluding to when it comes to like how many UCF bettors, like you're betting on Gus Malzahn and what you think Gus Malzahn is, and you're betting on KJ Jefferson, who you think is playing and who you think he is, and all that's not real. You know, I mean, it's like, to your point, yeah, I thought Ted Roof was a really big problem. I think the UCF fan base just thinks everything's about quarterbacks at this point, which, boy, welcome to college football. What a nice way to be introduced to it, which is Gus Malzahn managing a quarterback situation. And like, I'm watching UCF fans on my timeline because I know a ton of them go through the hopium cycle of Gus Malzahn. Like, it's the quarterback's fault. It's the offensive coordinator's fault. It's like, this is just what happens with Gus Malzahn. Yeah, they're pretty feisty in the American, you know, and they had JRP, but they just couldn't kind of put it together. I'm 100% with you there. It's very underrated, and they're kind of locked in this weird thing where they don't want to fire him, kind of similar to Mark Stoops, where it's like, you don't want to be the program that fires Gus Malzahn. And Terry Mahajer, their athletic director, also hired him at Arkansas State. So that's like a whole other level of history there. So anyway, yeah, I think UCF is kind of just dead in the water for a minute until they figure something out. There won't be a quarterback.
Yeah, really, really rough situation. When people were suggesting, there were people that threw out the idea of Gus to Florida. I'm like, in what world does that make sense? In what world? I do not get that for the life of me. Anyway, all right, let's kick it to our interview with Aaron and CD. Fun to have both of those guys on together. Really enjoyed that conversation. Think you will as well. By the way, we recorded this before it was official that they'd be playing the cocktail party in Atlanta and Tampa during those 2 years of stadium renovations in 26 and 27. Just wanted to be able to clean that up. So here's Aaron and CD. Now excited to be joined by 2 very, very special guests. It is Aaron Murray, Chris Doering, just a couple of record holders. Guys, it's great to have both of you. Aaron,
hold on real quick. Just a couple of guys that grew up Gator fans here. I want to make sure everybody remembers that Aaron Murray did grow up a Florida fan.
I don't know if I grew up necessarily a Florida fan. I just went to games because it was conveniently close to Tampa.
Because your uncle was a Florida fan, right?
My uncle was a Bull Gator. So like, I'm not going to say no to free tickets to sit behind the Florida Gators when Tim Tebow was there to go watch them. Doesn't make me a Florida fan. Just going to throw it out there.
All right.
I did go to more Florida games than anyone else growing up. So maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit of a Florida fan. A little bit.
Tampa and Gainesville are not that close. They're not that close.
No, they're not that. They're about an hour and a half. It's not.
Yeah, 45, somewhere around there.
I ain't going to USF football games. So like, if I'm going to go to a college football game, it's going to be the Florida.
Dang. I won't tell my guy Alex Golish that you said that, but nonetheless, yes, just a couple of childhood Florida fans today. Look, we're doing this early in the week, but it's great to be able to have both of you to be able to talk about this game. And you know, I do find myself wondering of all the questions that we can ask about this one. Look, CD, you had great quarterback play, so I don't need to ask you this, but Aaron, how many more touchdown passes could you have thrown for if you had CD catching passes on the other end?
Just a few more, that's for sure. Give me the big guy. What was your specialty, CD? Were you a tough nose over the middle of the field? Were you going?
Yeah, look at me.
I don't know if you had the speed. I don't know if you had the speed.
I only had a couple long throws in my career, but it was red zone target down in that part of the field, third down guy over the middle. The prototypical coach on the field, heady guy.
You would have been my Michael Bennett if you remember Michael Bennett. You would be my Michael. Just nice dig routes. Yeah. Some red zone, good frame, throw it up to him, make some inside fades, that kind of thing. Yep. But maybe a couple more, and maybe you still would have had the record if you and I were together.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it's tough to because I think both Aaron and I had tremendous teammates. I mean, playing on offense. Like I talk about my receiving core at Florida being better than the majority of the ones I was with in the NFL. It was me, Ike Hilliard, Riddell Anthony, Jacquez Green, Travis McGriff. I mean, it was a pretty star-studded group. And so I know Aaron had a bunch of targets that he was fortunate enough to have the chance to throw to as well. So, it's funny because I talked about this morning on the Monday morning show. Like, for me growing up, like Georgia was the most important game on the schedule. They beat us every year in every way in the 80s when I was a kid. And then the dominance that we had in the 90s, I think, made the Georgia game less important behind like Florida State and Tennessee. And right now, with Florida kind of struggling in that rivalry, I wonder how much like Georgia even cares about Florida as compared to Alabama or Tennessee or somebody else on the schedule.
I would say for me, I always view it as the most important game. I think partly because I'm from Florida, so there is something to that for me. Like it was always my main rivalry game, so I still think it's up there. And as you know, like going down to Jacksonville, the atmosphere, the uniqueness of it, I think fans enjoy. Even if Georgia's kind of dominating the rivalry now, enjoy that part of it of going to St. Simon's. If you got the college kids get the Friday off, so they're going down there early. So I think everything around it makes it really special, obviously. But right now, Georgia, Alabama is just on a different level, and I struggle with this, and I would love to get y'all's thoughts on this. As someone who played against Alabama once, obviously played at Georgia, I still struggle to say that's a rivalry game, because I think rivalry, I think the tradition, I think of obviously the neutral field versus Florida, I think the Georgia Tech game, I think Georgia Auburn and what those games have been like, and I know this is somewhat forming into this quote unquote new rivalry, but I don't know. I still don't consider Georgia-Alabama a rivalry game. I just consider it two elite teams that have been fortunate enough to face each other in some pretty big games for the past 6-7 years, but not to that rivalry stage yet.
Yeah, I think familiarity breeds contempt, right? And because Georgia and Alabama have played so frequently with so much on the line, it's become an important ball game. But I'd agree, I'm interested to see what happens. Does Texas become a rival of Georgia's now that they're in the league? Does Oklahoma maybe down the road, with the schedules being turned over as much as they are, who are the new rivals that kind of pop up in this conference? But I agree with Aaron, Connor. I mean, nothing better than going to Jacksonville. That game has just always meant so much to both fan bases. And in a day and age where college football is changing as rapidly as it is, holding on to that tradition. And I know Kirby likes to say that game needs to be moved home and home, but I hope it never does because it's just such a special environment over there in Jackson.
Yeah, Aaron, what are your thoughts on that? Because I was going to ask you guys about that. We know 26, 27, Jacksonville, they're having the stadium renovation, so there's kind of a debate about where are they going to play these games. Are they going to play in Tampa? Are they going to play it in Atlanta? What are they going to do with it? CD, you've got the unique experience of actually playing this game in a home stadium. But Aaron, if you found out that all of a sudden moving forward in this new SEC that they were going to have this be a true home and this game wasn't going to be played in Jacksonville, what would be your thoughts on that?
I'd be disappointed. I think it's right there, obviously, with Texas and Oklahoma as one of the unique, exciting traditions in all of college football. And I get Kirby wanting to use it as a weekend to have recruits on campus to get more guys to Athens. But to me, playing in that game in a neutral site was a huge selling point. That was to know that I was either going to go to Florida or Georgia and be able to play in this game, 3:30 at the time, CBS, prime time in a neutral site, 50-50, all that. I love that as a kid. I was hell yeah, Texas A&M, Arkansas, that does not need to be neutral site. That needs to go back to where on campus. I think they're going to go. I believe they're doing that as well going forward. But for Georgia, Florida in this game, I hope it never goes to Gainesville, Athens. If anything, if you want to change it up, maybe make it 1 year in Atlanta, The next year in Jacksonville, I don't know. But I loved it. Like, as a player, there was nothing better than going down there, driving over the bridge, seeing all the tents, the red and black, the orange and blue. I always tell this story, like my first time getting under center and looking up and seeing that 50-50 split. And I'm obviously in the unique position of being able to see that as the quarterback compared to everyone else who's kind of focused on other things. I'm looking down the field to see that divide right down the middle of the goalpost. There is nothing like that. I mean, Oklahoma, Texas is not like that. There is nothing like that in all of college football. So I think it would be unfortunate for the fans and for the players to miss out on that.
And Connor, you mentioned my experience. Like it was unique. Like as a college football fan growing up, always wanted to go to Sanford Stadium to play between the hedges, and it was awesome. It was really cool to have Georgia come to town. But it almost starts to feel like every other SEC game when you have that, and getting to be in that unique setting. Everything that Aaron just said mirrors the things that I think were so cool to me. And my first experience, my parents would never take me over to Jacksonville because it was always Florida disappointment one way or another. We had season tickets at home, but like my first experience going to Jacksonville, I had to sell programs just to get into the stadium, and it was such a like I was in awe of the SEC logo on the middle of the field, and just being able to never have a moment where it's quiet in the stadium. And when I played in that it was broken up into quarters. Now they've kind of changed it, as Aaron talked about, the two touching points being in the end zone, which is different. But it was a lot more of the red and black, orange and blue mixing together back in the day. It's just such a cool tradition, and the fact that it has its own Hall of Fame. I mean, that speaks to how important the game is, and just such an honor, I'm sure, for Aaron as it is for me to be included in that Hall of Fame that celebrates so many great years of this rivalry.
I would have totally disagreed with that take of, oh, you need to keep the game in Jacksonville, until I went to Jacksonville and saw this. And for me, it confirmed everything that I've always heard about this game, is that it's so unique. You have to experience the cocktail party. And it is kind of fun that it is part of one of the unique traditions of college football that we get to see this game. Even though it is in an NFL stadium, I think the atmosphere just screams college football. And I would challenge anyone who hasn't been to this, get to Jacksonville, witness it. This game is absolutely awesome. And even in a game like this year, where we're talking about two teams that are in very different places, this game still should deliver. And there's a lot of intrigue going into it. CD, I kind of want to get your take on Lagway, because I know you're all in with him. Like all things Lagway, it's hard to be out on him. I haven't heard anybody that's out on him, but the matchup that awaits, and having seen what this Georgia defense just did on the road to Texas in Austin, are you all in on Lagway being able to kind of withstand that and navigate the pressure that Georgia's going to bring?
Well, honestly, I was a Graham Mertz guy and thought Graham gave Florida's offense the best chance to win because of his experience, because of the ability to handle whatever looks you're going to get. And I understood that wanted to sprinkle in some DJ Lagway, but the fact of the matter is Graham Mertz is hurt now, and you got to go in the direction of developing the young freshman. And I think you saw it against Kentucky. He's going to have the big plays, and then he's going to have the poor decision and throw a bad interception, and just got to kind of live with it. The thing that comes back in my mind there, and I think about when Dan Mullen rolled Anthony Richardson out there as a freshman, and it looked good for about the first 27 minutes of the game, and then it fell apart with a couple big-time turnovers there in the late second quarter phase of that game. I think DJ Lagway will be more judicious with the football. I think you have to use him in the run game. I thought Florida got away from that after some early success against Kentucky. But I do think it's going to be a tough task. I mean, Georgia is the gold standard in college football now. And, going into that game with a veteran quarterback's challenging, let alone a freshman. So, I don't believe in moral victories at the University of Florida, but I'm hoping that this could be a competitive game into the fourth quarter.
Aaron, true or false? You did the Kentucky-Florida game just so that you could get the live look at Lagway, and then kind of leading up to Georgia, you get like the production meetings and stuff like that.
Get it, obviously the next day I was back in Athens in Kirby's desk, office, telling him everything that I saw. So yeah. No, I did not do that. I don't want to get fired from ESPN. But I'm as UCD, a big Graham Mertz fan. And what he did last year, the way he played this season. The difference is DJ does give a little bit more of the explosive ability to push the ball down the field. Like you could tell from the very first game, the first time he got out there to the start to that, whenever he played the third and sixth and ninth possession of the football games, there was just, whether it was luck based on just a play that was called and the defense being perfect for it, or just his willingness at times to just push the ball vertically down the field, there was a difference in that. And Graham is great with taking the completions, knowing where to go, moving the ball methodically down the field. But as we all know, it's not easy, especially against a defense like Georgia that they're going to face, to have a 10, 12, 15 play drive in order to score. You need to be able to take some shots. You have to be able to score from, between the 50 and 30 yard line. And I do think DJ gives you that better opportunity. Will he make some mistakes? Yes. You just hope that he makes enough explosive plays down the field. I do caution, though, and this is something the coaching staff told us, wanting to run him too much, because the difference between him running pre-Graham Mertz and post-Graham Mertz is the fact that there is not a third guy that you feel good about. So do you truly want to run DJ Lagway into the heart of that Georgia defense and get him hit? So if they're going to run him, same thing they did versus Kentucky, they're going to want to get him on the edges. They're going to want to pick their spots, whether it's certain third down situations, certain red zone situations. But you don't want to just say, hey, yes, we need him to run the football, but we also cannot have him coming out because there is no one behind him that could go out there and beat Georgia if he does go down.
Yeah, Aaron, I think it's a really difficult thing to juggle if you're Billy Napier, because you look at how you're going to beat this Georgia team. You're not going to have these methodical drives. The Graham Mertz drives that you would have expected if he were the starter, I don't know that that's the game plan. You need to hit on these chunk plays, just like Kyle Trask did a few years ago in this game. I think he had like 5 passes of 30 yards in the first half. And if you're Lagway, you'd like to be able to dial up that deep game, but you're extremely young playing in this game. You've been in that spot where you've been a young quarterback. You talk about seeing this field, this atmosphere for the first time at that age. How would you handle this if you were developing a passing game plan for what Lagway needs to do to have success against Georgia?
I do. I think you take some shots early. And I know Georgia played really well against Texas and Quinn, who's a very veteran quarterback and really good receivers. But I mean, if you look at this Florida offense as a whole, and I'd love obviously CD's opinion on this, they have really good receivers and they got playmakers. They got guys with speed. I mean, Eugene Wilson and Badger and et cetera. They got guys that can take the top off. And Georgia's defense had a really good game against Texas. Front seven looked the best it's looked all season. I thought the secondary played the best it's looked all season, but that's still one game. I want to see, can Georgia do that back-to-back weeks? Can Georgia's defense do that was that the confidence builder that Georgia now can take and move forward? Obviously, Dog fans are hoping it is, but we've seen instances this season where that defense hasn't been able to get to the quarterback, where the youth of the secondary has caused some explosive plays down the field. So I want to see Georgia do it back-to-back weeks. And if I'm Florida, I'm going to say, hey, listen, this is the best Florida offense line that we've had in 3 years. They're protecting well. We have speed on the outside. We're the underdogs. Let's just take some shots. And we have a quarterback that is deadly accurate with the deep ball. So to me, I don't want to hold back and just say, hey, go out there, read the defense, be methodical, try to hit some easy throws. I think you weave that in there. But I would like to see some early shots from Florida. Test that secondary for Georgia and see if you can win some one-on-ones, which I think they believe they can.
Yeah, I think that was what the surprising part of the first half of the season was how many explosive passing plays Georgia's secondary was giving up. Mm-hmm. Some of it was about not getting the pressure that we typically see from the Georgia front seven, and some of it had to do with guys not playing the ball in the air very well back there. So I do think there's some opportunities, and let's be honest, styles make fights, and matchups are important, and I do think, to Aaron's point, Florida's receivers are really good this year. You go out and get DK from Wisconsin. You get Badger from Arizona State. Trey Wilson back for his second season. There's a lot of explosiveness there. The tight ends have been productive. And to Aaron's point, the offensive line, all of a sudden, they were mashing Kentucky's defensive front. That was surprising to me. Jaden Baugh gives you some hope as a freshman running back that, Montreal Johnson goes out and Jaden looks like he brings another type of run with the cutting ability and how hard he finishes runs. So I think there's some things that Florida has some hope about, but I really do think it comes down to hitting the explosive plays, because like you guys said, just putting together an 8, 9, 10 play drive against the Georgia defense is not all that likely.
Well, I'm a little bit more report on this offense too. You've gone the past 2 weeks against 2 very talented defenses. You were in Knoxville against Tennessee and moved the ball well. Couldn't score in the red zone, but moved the ball really well. And then you had your freshman quarterback throw an incredible pass to put that game in the overtime. So a lot of confidence should be built from that game of like, we have a good offense. Then Kentucky is no slouch on defense either. Like CD said, that's a very talented front seven. They're big, they're physical up front. Maybe you have some questions in the back end, but overall, like, you performed, I would say, at a high level, back-to-back games against two quality defenses. One of them, probably one of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the SEC on the road in Knoxville. So, like, you should have confidence that you can move the ball against Georgia on a neutral site as long as DJ takes care of it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think Florida's passing game might actually feel better about where it's at compared to Georgia's passing game, which I would not have expected to say at this point of the season. CD, let's get you on the other side of this as well. How would you get Georgia's passing game going? Because I know I watch you and Ben Watson all the time on SEC Final talk about this, and Ben is still Georgia's number 1 team in the SEC and stuff like that. But the lingering concern, even after the Texas game, is, man, what's it going to take to get this group going? Because it has not felt like it's been in sync all season.
I do think they're starting to figure it out a little bit, though. They're running the ball better. You're seeing the offensive line get healthier and protect a little bit better. You're seeing Arian Smith kind of develop, Dylan Bell, those guys becoming, more the prime targets for Carson Beck. And maybe Aaron can explain this better than I can, having played the position, but Carson just hasn't looked comfortable for a lot of the season for whatever reason. And maybe it's the lack of trust for some of the receivers or the lack of trust in the offensive line, but they just have not developed a lot of rhythm. And offensive football is about creating rhythm. It's about staying on pace and staying ahead of the chains and not being in third and long situations. So the fact that they hadn't run the ball very well on first and second downs, I think probably contributed to that too. But I do think, Aaron, it feels to me like they're starting to figure it out. Maybe that has to do with them getting healthy and some guys getting some more experience. But I felt better about this offense now than I did probably a couple weeks ago.
Well, I feel better about the run game. There's no doubt about it. This is the uniqueness of college football nowadays. Of a year ago, Etienne's wearing the Florida uniform, and then heading into this game, he'll be wearing the red and black. And he's really come on. I think I do agree. The offensive line's gotten healthier. I think Etienne's the most explosive player on the football team, or at least on the offensive side of the football. And they're starting to get a rhythm there. And that's obviously what you want to do in SEC ball is if you can establish line of scrimmage, run the football, knowing Bobo, from there, do some play action passes and take some shots. But overall, there's just a lack of trust. There is at times a ton of drops, from Arian Smith. Then Dylan Bell had some drops last game. Yeah. The tight ends have had some drops. So no one has played consistent. Like, this is not just a Carson Beck has not looked good this year. This has been, hey, it's hard to play quarterback when your offense line's changing every week, when the running back room has been inconsistent, when the receivers have been inconsistent. Like, look at the NFL right now. Brock Bowers is dominating. Ladd McConkey is dominating. You lost those two guys, and no one has been able to fill the shoes. Like, you were hoping Dom Lovett, who I had the spring game, obviously we've seen him at Missouri, was hoping that he would be that superstar. And he's been good, not elite. Arian has made plays, but then he's dropped a couple. So like I said, like, who is that guy that's going to step up and say, hey, I'm the guy in the room? And you just have not seen anyone really truly do that yet. So can they get going? Did they use the bye week to gain some confidence? I like Lawson Lucky. I think he's the most productive tight end in the group. But also, too, from a receiver standpoint, two guys that were starters this year are no longer on the team. Like, Colby Young was playing well. Colby Young was a red zone threat. He's off the team. Rara was projected to be a starter. He's not on the team. So it's just been I would say, somewhat of a nightmare from moving parts to inconsistency for Carson that, maybe I think they just really need that bye week to hopefully figure out what they can do in the pass game.
Aaron, you bring up BTN. I was going to ask you about him because that dynamic is very unique to be able to cross enemy lines and play in this game, and knowing that there are going to be a lot of people that would like to see him fail in this game. Yeah. I mean, let's just call it what it is. You've been in that spot, albeit with different circumstances, as a Florida boy playing in this game. Some would say a Florida fan growing up. But you were in this game knowing that you were going to hear about it from people back home all week leading up to it. And obviously it's different for Etienne growing up in Louisiana, but kind of still some of that angst and some of that, like, hey, you have truly become an enemy on the other side. What was that dynamic like? Do you remember an experience that kind of like made you realize, oh boy, like I'm truly on the Georgia side now?
Well, I mean, a couple. Obviously, my high school half my high school went to Florida, half my high school went to Florida State. So like leading up to the game, I get a bunch of text messages from my Florida State buddies being like, kick their butt. Florida buddies be like, I hope you suck tomorrow. I still love you. My favorite restaurant growing up, I'm not going to name names here, but obviously as soon as I committed to Georgia, I stopped getting the free chicken parm before games on Friday night. So, and I mean, for me, it was special to go 3-1 so my parents can proudly go back to Tampa wearing their Georgia gear and not have to hear the crap from Florida fans. So that was always nice. But I don't know how much I'm not saying we're numb to it, but this is college football nowadays. So will he get walking out of the tunnel for pregame warmups, Florida fans talking crap and booing him and saying, bad things? Probably, yeah. But like he would get that regardless of what happened. That's just the nature of just fans being fans. But this is a business nowadays. This is a mini NFL. Players are used to just new teammates, guys moving around, guys coming from rivals to their team. So I don't think like anyone on Florida is going to be trying to take a dirty hit on him. I don't think that obviously Georgia players are excited the moment he stepped foot in the locker room. I don't think you're going to see anything, like I said, mostly the dirty thing. And CD, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's any sort of animosity for Florida players to say, hey, screw Trevor. Let's go out there and try to take his knees out.
I think Aaron makes a good point because from the fan perspective or us as old guys, like we want somebody to be, wanting to take his head off. But Florida's already played a bunch of their teammates that were at Texas A&M early in the season, and you couldn't even goad any of those players into saying anything bad about them. So I don't think anything's going to come of this one. In fact, I talked to a bunch of the players that are still friends with ETN and text with him, and like it bothers me almost that they're not mad at him for leaving him. But that, like to Aaron's point, it is what it is, and I think they look at it through a much more business-minded perspective than probably we did as players that were intent on staying from the time we were freshmen to the time we left as graduates.
Yeah, I think the Princely and Monmielen reunion with Florida will be a little bit different, a little bit of a different tenor after some of the comments he had after arriving at Ole Miss. Guys, let's get out of here with some X factors and predictions. I think those Florida offensive tackles, we were talking about them before, the protection's been better. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon, the San Diego transfer at right tackle, and then Austin Barber, third-year starter. I think those guys are the X factor. Jacksonville native, by the way. I think if DJ is going to get timed, like those guys have to be really good. And if Florida's going to do what it wants downfield, that obviously they have to be able to check that box. But CD, let's start with you here. Who's your X factor in this matchup?
We talked about the offensive line for Georgia being better. I still don't think they're what typically we expect from Georgia offensive line. So I think the Florida defensive line has been the most surprising thing to me. The offensive line has been much better running the football behind those guys. But like the way they penetrated against a Tennessee offensive line that I thought was pretty good prior to that game, the way that they penetrated against Kentucky a couple weeks ago, I think that group is going to be the most important because we talked about the uncomfortability of Carson Beck to this point in time. If you can force him into some turnovers, which he has made this year at a surprising rate, I think that gives Florida a chance to stay in the ballgame.
Yeah, I do think it's that matchup, at least for Georgia, to be able to run the football. I mean, Florida still has been very inconsistent against the run this year. I think they're ranked in the bottom part of the SEC when it comes to rush defense. So can you build on the momentum with Etienne and how well he's been to take some of the pressure off Carson? And then flip it over the other side. I do think DJ is a superstar in the making. I think DJ is going to be one of the premier quarterbacks, not only in the SEC, but in all of college football. He's, met with him last week, sat down with him, very mature for his age. He's played a decent amount of football already this season. So like the plan set forth is now going to pay dividends because he has been able to get into the game, play against Tennessee on the road, play against Kentucky a week ago. So he's not a veteran. He hasn't seen a lot of football still, but enough to where you should feel confident that nothing is going to completely shock him in this game. So how does he handle the moment? Because it's different. Like we talked about at the beginning, and I played as a freshman, not a true freshman, but a redshirt freshman. Getting in that stadium, knowing how big this rivalry is, I'm sure he's never been there before, being from the state of Texas. Getting in there for your first snap and looking around and seeing just the uniqueness of that atmosphere can throw you off a little bit. So can he just get his wits from him early, be the mature kid that Florida fans are hoping he can be, and just not make too many mistakes?
I'm going Georgia by 3 touchdowns, which sounds really lopsided, but it's actually just because I predicted Texas to beat Georgia by 3 touchdowns. So it's a little bit of like a Georgia fans, like I messed up. I'm sorry. So I'll defer to you guys on this. CD, do you have a prediction for this one?
Yeah, I'd love to sit here and tell you that I expect Florida to win. My hope is that it's a competitive ball game. And people have asked me about Billy Napier's future. I think I don't know that there's a number of wins that he has to have to retain his job. I think it's about the aesthetics, about the competitiveness the rest of the way, about the cleanliness of execution and not the self-inflicted penalties and disorganization on the sideline. Georgia's the gold standard. And so Florida needs to show that they've narrowed the gap in talent discrepancy. And if they can make this a competitive ball game deep into the second half, again, we don't deal in moral victories, but I think we're at a point right now where that's kind of the reality. So I think Florida probably hangs in for a while. And I think at the end of the day, the experience factor and the youth of Florida is the difference. And Georgia goes on to win by 13.
Yeah, I hope Billy keeps his job. I really like Billy as a coach. I mean, you look at their 3 losses this year. They're 3 teams that are projected in the playoffs, top 10 football team. So, and probably should have won that game there in Knoxville. So I like him as a coach. I hate obviously what he's going through with the schedule that they have this season. But I agree with Georgia's just more talented on both sides of the football. This would have to be a game where Carson makes mistakes like he did against Alabama, like he did against obviously Texas, for Florida to really truly have an opportunity to win this one. But I think it's a 31-17 game. I still do not trust Georgia's offense right now to be able to play clean, to create explosive plays. And I think Florida's defense is good enough on all 3 levels to kind of create some issues. So I'm going to see that. I think it's a good 3 quarter. I think Georgia maybe pulls away a little bit in the 4th quarter, wins by 2 scores.
Guys, this has been fun. Hopefully we can do this every year. Let's call it Florida Georgia Line. That name's not being taken right now. That's not
no, never heard that before.
Georgia, Florida.
Georgia, Florida. My bad. Well, I always just try and just cater it to whatever audience I'm speaking to. Florida, Georgia versus Georgia, Florida. Although, if we're being honest, we want to get into AP style. Alphabetically
It's
speaking.
Alphabetical. Exactly. I've been saying that forever.
No. It's whoever wins the previous year.
Georgia, Florida line doesn't sell out a stadium. Florida, Georgia line sells out a stadium.
We don't know that.
Fair point. Guys, appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, brother.
All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. Mind if I start?
Go ahead, man.
Jaden Daniels is my lad of the week. Happy for him. Happy for Jaden. God, it's bittersweet watching him play football. I love me some Jaden Daniels and what he's become in his career. But in my position now as a Bears fan, I don't root against him. Let me make that perfectly clear. But it's the reaction to the Jaden Daniels success and what it means in relation to Caleb Williams. And then these people who are like, oh, the Bears should have taken him. I hate that. I hate that so much because why can't both guys end up being really good? That was one of the more painful live sporting experiences I've watched, the end of that game. And let me paint a little bit of a picture for those who have somehow, maybe you've already forgotten the Jaden Daniels Hail Mary. I can't. I tried to mute it on Twitter, but I can't just mute Jaden Daniels. I don't want to do that because I want him to have success, and I'm not going to put myself through that. But I was, we were just about to put Claire to bed. It just gotten through bath time and stuff like that. Bears aren't always on national TV. I don't have NFL Sunday ticket. It's just not worth the price at this point. So when they're on national TV, I try and, catch a decent amount of it or whatever. And so we have it on basically for the whole second half. And it's just kind of background as, we're doing stuff around the house and whatnot. And you lock into certain key stuff. But the sequence when it played out, I said, Lauren, when there was 27 seconds left, I said, I think they scored too early. And then when the Commanders took over, I said, if they win this game on a Hail Mary, I don't think I'll cry. I don't think I will, but I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to react in this moment. And the play happens. And again, this is Lauren's literally holding Claire as Claire's about to go to bed. And I say mid-play, why are they rushing 3? Of course, play happens. I said, oh my God, he caught it. Walk to the kitchen, put my head down, think about, is my daughter about to see something that she's never seen before from her dad? Is she about to see a grown man cry from a regular season sporting event? Held it back. More so just stunned. More just stunned, like you think you've seen it all. And especially when you're in an inept franchise, you've seen crazy ways to lose. You've seen crazy ways to lose even in the Eberflus era. I mean, goodness gracious, it's been wild. And just the coaching malpractice that happened. And shout out Tyreek the Freak Stevenson for apparently still having a job after what occurred on Sunday. That was a tough one, man. That was tough. That was like 2 days of not consuming anything NFL related, just in the off chance that someone would bring up that play and I'd have to watch it. And I've still probably seen it a dozen times. And I've asked myself, why do I root for this team? Why do I root for this franchise? So happy for Jayden Daniels, like so unbelievably happy. It's great. I love that he's doing this. I do. I really do. But God, that sucked. Hated it.
Let me give you a word of advice here. You can mute a phrase. So all you have to do is mute Jaden Bears. And then he's only played the Bears once. So you can miss out on just that part of the content. The thing that's funny, and this is going to be a really funny line of the week. I remember one of my buddies talked about this the other day about Jaden. I don't know if I said this out here, but it's so funny because the criticism of Jaden was, well, he goes for his first and second read and then he takes off. And my buddy put it really eloquently. He said, well, that's only a problem if they could stop that in the NFL. And they can't. I mean, if you got 2 first-round receivers on the outside and neither of them are open and you could take off and run 30 yards, it's the wrong decision to check it down. And we see that with Jaden's arm strength, with the way that he's able to hit guys downfield. Yeah, like I like Terry McLaurin. I think he's fine. But this group of receivers is the worst he's played with probably since he was at Arizona State. And it's crazy that him and Cliff Kingsbury are just taking over the world right now. And yeah, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but in reality, I don't think the difference is that much between the two. Not to go, should have drafted whoever, but it really just is. Cliff Kingsbury is a pretty smart offensive mind, right? I talked about that with like a Dan Mullen or even a Sean Payton, where it's like, if you guys stayed as OCs, you'd be a problem. Maybe even Ryan Day would be great at that. And it's like, that's where Cliff's at. Whereas like on the other side with the Bears, they just don't have the coaching staff in place. They have the talent for sure as far as the receivers. But so, yeah, I think the jury is still out, but round one, very convincingly, are very loud for Jalen.
I've never Jaden. Yeah. Jalen Hurts also playing phenomenally well right now. I've never thought to myself, I wish I could be a booster of a pro sports team. And I'm not saying that I would sign off on doing this. Probably wouldn't get the approval from the boss, and by the boss I mean Lauren. But if you told me, Connor, you have a chance to finance the Ben Johnson contract for him to come and take over the Chicago Bears so that things like that don't happen, I would think that guy, even though he's an offensive-minded head coach, has spent enough time around a competent head coach in Dan Campbell in which he would make sure that things like that never, ever, 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 ever happen. Again, couldn't be happier for Jayden Daniels. I guess I could be a little bit happier. But the fact that this instance occurred at my team's expense was not fun. I think about that sometimes. I'm a little bit removed from fandom. I just don't have as much time to be able to devote to it. It's like, it is work. It is a career, a job. There's just not things that eat me up in the way that things have when I was 25 or something like that, or 21. That ate me up pretty good, man. That ate me up pretty good. That was not fun.
Yeah, I'm with you. You can only really have space for maybe 2 or 3 sports, as a full-time fan. And especially if you work in sports the way that we do, it's I got to care about the WNBA and the NWSL now too. Yeah. So it's great when you don't root for a competent organization the way the Saints are the same way. Saints fooled me through 2 weeks. They were undefeated. They had the best offense in the NFL. I said, I'm going to have my buddies over and put on a jersey, watch the game, watch the horrible Eagles game, I'm saying, with Brady. So yeah, it's actually the best. I always say, give me a 2 or give me an 8. Don't give me a 6 or a 5 out of 10 because I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
There are 2. And then maybe, but Caleb, when he gets it, might be an 8. It'll never be either.
It'll never be well down the stretch too.
Yeah.
Things well. Oh, yeah. Golly. The offensive lineman handoff after. All right. I'm getting worked up again. Lad of the week. Go ahead.
All right. So this is what I said this is going to be funny. Mine is, of course, Marcel Reed. So we're just hyping up quarterbacks that crushed our dreams this weekend. This is great. And we could talk about Colin Klein too, because at the end of the day, I'm just so horrified of this A&M team. The amount of gumption that they have, I guess that's the PC word, to make the quarterback switch, just totally change the offense in the middle of the game. I just keep saying it, guys. Wait till they get that Jimbo money in. If this staff had the money that Jimbo had, send the season. All right, because nobody's out spending this team. We've seen that. And if you got the young fire offensive coordinator, if you got the head coach that looks like Angry Baloo, you're going to be unbeatable. And I mean, so point being with Reed, like I said, every spot he got, we talk about the opportunities that we're given in this world. As a backup quarterback, you're told, your chance is already coming on. Wigman's just started. We both think Wigman's a good to great quarterback, or at least very good to very good quarterback, but it's matchup dependent, right? If you have a great pass rush, the way that LSU does, he gets flustered, as we saw. With Reed coming in and saying, we got this veteran guy who's been through the wars. He can't handle this pass rush. You need to get out there and do it. First possession comes at the 8-yard line. And I mean, LSU's defense in the second half has been unreal until they saw Marcel Reed and immediately scored. You're saying to yourself, all right, well, that was cheap. It was 8 yards, whatever. Nuss won't throw another pick. Well, he threw 2 more. And so point being, it just kept happening. So yeah, I think that, it's just so hard for me to root against Texas A&M, man. I know I just didn't pick them today, but their fans are funny. I get it. But there's a group of people who have been suffering under the thumb of Texas, Oklahoma, now in the SEC, Alabama, LSU. And yeah, I unfortunately, as weird as it sounds, I feel like they've been through enough. And I feel like a fun game like that, and they've had 2 of those games against LSU in recent years. Maybe we could do it against somebody else. But yeah, I'm the amount of seismic shift, the amount of dollars spent, the amount of happiness, the amount of lives changed by performance like that cannot go unstated. So yeah, I always tell my people, there's always an excuse when you lose. You could always tell people, oh, I came in, I was down. We were already losing. Da, da, da. Why not just have a story when you win? If you already have the excuse in the back of your head, if you could already say, well, I came out through 2 picks, we already screwed, so I might as well just go out there and have fun. That's exactly what he did. I think that's going to be his legacy. If nothing else, he's going to be remembered as a one-game wonder against LSU, but he's already had that game before. So I'm excited about this kid.
Yeah, I think he's got a good future. I really do. I think he's got room for improvement as a passer, and as he continues to get more reps in this offense, which it looks like he's going to get, it's going to be fun to watch. And I give the guy so much credit for what he did in the bowl game last year.
Yeah.
People forget Jalen Henderson goes down on the first series of that game, and all of a sudden it's Marcel Reed time. And I can guarantee you he was not thinking he was going to be playing that night and especially with a roster that was, again, not quite at post 2021 LSU 39 scholarships, but not very far off of that.
Not
in that
far
game
off,
against Oklahoma State. And Regis was ready. And I was like, dang, he's giving him a chance in this game. And I continue to say, you just never know when your number is going to be called. Sometimes these windows that guys get, and that's the key thing to remember in this portal era. You don't guarantee opportunities, but if you get that window, that door to open just a tiny bit, man, it's up to you to take advantage of that. Marcel Reed has done just such a tremendous job of that. And he's got a big one on Saturday. Got a big one to be able to show that he is up for this task. If Marcel Reed is starting in an SEC championship game, will it be stunning? Not necessarily. Not at this point. Definitely can't rule it out. Feels like he is unlocking all the key ingredients of the Colin Klein offense.
Yeah, and I think right now he's like the Coach O of quarterbacks, right? He's like the interim quarterback coach, where he comes in off the bench. It's like, oh, we hate to see Marcel Reed. But to your point, still younger guy, redshirt freshman, got to have an offseason with Colin Klein. So he's only going to get better from here. Who you got to learn from you? You.
Here's not what I'm wondering about. If A&M had put in Marcel Reed in the third quarter of the Notre Dame game, is A&M undefeated? Are we talking about A&M as the number 2 team in college football right now?
If Brian Kelly can't figure it out and bring Bear, I don't think Marcus Freeman can. He had to have the right D lineman on the field in these big games.
I guarantee you Mike Elko has thought about that since. Looking back, and again, he is banged the drum for Connor Wigman. He is been in his
as he should have. He's
through.
managed this perfectly so far. It's nuts how perfectly he's managed such a weird situation.
Yeah, he's almost set an unfair standard for himself for navigating this quarterback situation to get to this point in the season as a top 10 team, obviously controlling its own path in the SEC. Pivotal week 10 in the SEC should be an awesome weekend of college football. If you haven't, please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.